Chapter 1420. The small forest at the east end of the amusement park was not big. There were high walls in front and on the right. If she walked forward, she would reach a very hidden corner. Feng Ling's expression did not change. Hearing the footsteps behind her, she immediately scanned all the nearby trees. There were no amusement facilities here, and few people would come here. She engraved the height and position of all the trees, as well as the location of the slightly taller grass in front of her into her mind in a second, automatically analyzing it into the best map for escaping in the wilderness and capturing the enemy. The footsteps of the two men behind her suddenly slowed down. They seemed to be observing the surroundings and realized that there was no way out, but Feng Ling still walked forward without hesitation. At the same time, Feng Ling had already circled around a thick tree in front of her and quickly disappeared from their sight. From their point of view, at first, they wanted to deal with this woman who was a hindrance, and then take the child away. But now, they felt that something was wrong. However, they had chased her all the way here, and there was no way forward. She was just a woman. What else could they do? At this moment, the tall and strong man picked up his phone and called his accomplice in the car outside. He whispered something, and the tall and thin man with the baseball bat continued to follow. As this place was relatively close to the lake area in the amusement park and no one came to clean it all year round, the high wall at the end of the small forest was covered with moss. When the wind blew, the lush smell of the forest brushed the tip of her nose. Feng Ling accurately found the place with the most moss on the wall and the cleaner place. She rushed forward, raised her hand, and pressed the wall. She nimbly stepped up and jumped up the high wall. A few seconds later, the two people who caught up also sped up, but because they were in too much of a hurry, they didn't notice that there was so much moss on the wall. Suddenly, a muffled scream came from the ground. The tall and thin man, who was about to climb up with a baseball bat with one hand, fell from the wall and lay on the ground with his limbs spread wide open. Then, the baseball bat in his hand suddenly flew up and smashed into his face, causing him to see stars and couldn't recover for a few seconds. The other person had just made a call and hurried forward to help him up. The tall and thin man stood up with a grimace. He turned around and spat a mouthful of blood on the ground. *CK, the baseball bat hit his own mouth. His gums were about to split. This woman has some skills. She can climb up such a high wall just like that. Are we still chasing? Chase! That child, ask them to come and take the child away. We can't let this woman go. Continue to chase after her. The two of them hurriedly climbed up the high wall and searched for the figure that had disappeared. At this moment, Feng Ling suddenly revealed a corner of her clothes less than 100 meters away from here. The two men on the wall saw it and quickly jumped down to chase after her. The tall and strong man picked up the phone that was ringing as he ran. On the other side of the phone, the middle-aged man's cold voice sounded. Get rid of that woman. Don't let her get in the way. The two of them no longer hesitated. They pulled out two Ying short knives from their waists and rushed over. Feng Ling walked in front. Outside the high wall was a closed high-rise residential area. There were about dozens of buildings in the residential area. She circled around the landscaped garden behind the residential area and headed straight for the door of a tall building that had just been opened by a person. She grabbed the door in time before it closed and quickly walked in. She did not follow the person to the elevator but turned around and ran up the escalator. Just as she had expected, the moment she ran up to the third floor, the door downstairs had already opened. The moment the two people rushed in, they were not stupid. One chose to wait for the elevator, while the other directly climbed up the stairs. The two of them wanted to pincer attack, one from the top and the other from the bottom. At this time, Feng Ling was no longer running. She stood at the safety door on the third floor and casually closed the door to avoid disturbing the people living on this floor. She heard the man's footsteps getting closer and closer in the corridor. At the same time, she heard that another elevator had already arrived on the first floor. Feng Ling stopped at the corner between the third and fourth floors. At this moment, the man had already rushed up. The moment he saw her, he reached into his pocket, held the knife that he had already prepared, and rushed up to her. However, the moment the other party ran up with great difficulty, Feng Ling pressed one hand on the handrail of the stairs and easily flipped over, jumping back to the corner between the second and third floors. The moment she landed, she looked up at the person who had just run up and gave him a provocative cold smile. At the same time, she raised her hand and made a "he's very weak" gesture to stimulate the other party's emotions. When the other party cursed with a livid face and also wanted to jump down, Feng Ling only took a slight step back to avoid being hit. However, the second before the other party landed, she raised her leg and swept it forward, successfully tripping the other party. Then, she locked one of his arms behind his back. She twisted her hand and snatched the knife from his hand. She raised her leg and kicked the back of his knee. The tall and strong man, who was probably twice as heavy as her, cried out in pain and knelt to the ground. At this moment, another tall and skinny man who had already taken the elevator upstairs quickly came down from the 6th or 7th floor with a baseball bat in his hand. When he heard his partner's screams, he quickened his pace and rushed to this floor in a few steps. The moment her gaze met Feng Ling's, Feng Ling kicked the man's wrist away. As he staggered to his feet, she quickly picked up the knife on the ground. As usual, she pressed it against the staircase railing and easily flipped and jumped. She had already landed at the junction of the first and second floors. She then turned and rushed out. After opening the door and rushing out, Feng Ling first circled to the back of the building and glanced at the nearest building. At the same time, she saw two large trucks by the side that should be used for moving. Generally, cars were rarely allowed to enter this kind of enclosed community unless it was for moving. According to normal thinking, it would be more suitable to hide behind another building, but she didn't want to hide, so she went to the back of one of the cars. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no one beside the car, she climbed up and jumped into the car with a lot of furniture. She then squeezed into the wardrobe and refrigerator box. Her phone quietly lit up in her pocket. Earlier, she had already turned it to silent. She looked down and saw that it was a call from Li Nanheng. It was not convenient for her to answer it now, so she did not take out her phone. Chapter 14:21. At this moment, a few people came over from the side of the train and were moving things out. These people were all local Americans. Most of them were workers and the bosses of the moving company. Feng Ling listened to them arrange which things to move first. After confirming that they did not intend to move the largest wardrobe and refrigerator, she squatted there and did not move. At the same time, the two stalkers had already caught up with them. When they saw the two trucks and the few people beside them, and then saw the things they were moving out, they immediately walked over and circled around the back of the truck. After confirming that there was nothing in the truck, they turned around and went straight to the building in front of them to chase after them. When the workers beside the truck left with the things, Feng Ling leaned inside and listened for a while before getting up and going out. Just as she jumped out of the carriage, she suddenly bumped into someone. Her entire face almost bumped into his arms. Feng Ling staggered half a step and instinctively raised her hand. Before she could recover from the pain in her nose, she heard the man's voice. "You're not answering the phone." Feng Ling looked up and saw that Li Nanheng was standing in front of her. His cold brows were slightly raised. Her expression instantly relaxed. "I was hiding from someone earlier. I was afraid that I would make a sound, so I didn't answer. The phone is silent in my pocket." At this moment, the two people who had just bypassed the building seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. They suddenly turned back and happened to see the man standing with Feng Ling. The moment they saw Li Nanheng, the two of them exchanged puzzled looks as though they were considering if they should go over. Didn't you say you were going back to the Feng family? Why did you come out alone in broad daylight? Li Nanheng had a smile on his face that the two people standing far away could not understand. They could not hear what he was saying, but they were certain that he and Feng Ling knew each other. How did you come here? Have you gone to see little Momo? Feng Ling leaned toward the back of the truck and asked softly. When I passed by the Ferris wheel, I saw your old madam with her servants and children. I've already arranged for them to be in the security room of the amusement park. I called someone to guard them. Don't worry. With the experience of fighting together many years ago, she could immediately understand each other's thoughts with just a glance and a word. Just now, she was indeed trying to buy time for the old man and the child to be rescued, and she also knew that Li Nanheng would definitely come after the previous call. Feng Ling was relieved and didn't ask any more questions. She turned to look at the two men and said lightly, "It's good that you've successfully moved them away. There's no need to continue walking the dog. You can start killing." Li Nanheng glanced at her, and Feng Ling also turned to look at him. They looked at each other tacitly. When she looked up, she saw the black light in the corner of the man's eyes. She knew that the man's eyes were really gradually recovering. It wouldn't affect anything even if he came out alone. The two of them were very close, so close that her hand was almost pressed against the man's muscular forearm. Li Nanheng, who had almost recovered to his previous state, was standing beside her. They were just two stalkers. What was there to hesitate about? Feng Ling turned to look in that direction. Not far away, the man holding the baseball bat received Feng Ling's gaze and immediately sized up Li Nanheng warily. He clenched the baseball bat in his hand and did not dare to act rashly. How? Do you want a fat one or a thin one? The smile on Li Nanheng's face became even more obvious, as though he was discussing whether the two of them wanted to eat spicy or not. I say, do you dare to bring me along when you return to the Feng family next time? I have to find an opportunity to curry favor with the old madam and the old master. You have to create an opportunity for me, right? Feng Ling, I think old Madam Feng was quite frightened earlier. I'll drive you back later and go straight to the Feng family's house. Why don't you stay in the Feng family for a night? Feng Ling, there were quite a lot of people in this neighborhood. They came and went, and it was a bustling and expensive residence. There were people of all nationalities and colors. Everyone was rushing out or rushing back. At this moment, Li Nanheng raised his hand and put it around her shoulder. He smiled and lowered his head to kiss her cheek. Feng Ling was about to dodge, but the man held her firmly. He kissed her cheek again and again, then pressed his lips against her hair until her body was completely in his arms. Facing the two of them, Li Nanheng glanced at the baseball bat in the man's hand more than 10 meters away. What did you bring? His lips were pressed against her ear. At this moment, he was smiling, but his voice was clear and serious. He asked in a tone that only she could hear. There's only one knife. I snatched it from them. Feng Ling remained motionless in his embrace. Li Nanheng hugged her tightly in his arms. At the same time, he seemed to want to leave with her in his arms. He turned around with her. At this moment, Li Nanheng's phone rang in his pocket. He stood on the spot and picked up the phone, exposing his back to the two people who were about to pounce on him at any moment. It's Xiao Su. Li Nanheng hung up the phone and kissed Feng Ling's ear. He asked if he needed to come to New York to pick us up. At this moment, they were standing in the middle of the crowd in the neighborhood. The drivers in the two trucks did not know what had happened. They got out of the car and lit a cigarette. Li Nanheng glanced at them and walked over. Brother, can I borrow a cigarette? For a moment, Feng Ling didn't know if he was addicted to smoking or something. She quickly reached out to pull his hand back and whispered with her brows pressed down, "You're not allowed to smoke. You haven't smoked in the past few months. If you quit, then quit. Why are you still smoking?" Li Nanheng lowered his head to look at her and smiled. "If you say that you want me to quit smoking and drinking in order to have a healthy child, I promise that from now on, I'll wear a mask when I go out. I won't even smell secondhand smoke." In the end, you ran out to walk the dog alone. You don't have the self-awareness of being a mother at any time. Can't you stop? Feng Ling. I'm doing this for little Momo's safety. I don't want to fight and kill every day. Li Nanheng lowered his head to look at her. Feng Ling held his strong arm with one hand and placed the other in her pocket, holding the knife. The two dogs behind saw that the two of them really looked like a couple. First, they kissed and hugged each other. Then, they seemed to have said something to each other, and their expressions became much more restrained. In fact, on the phone earlier, Xiao Su, who already knew about the situation in New York, asked, "Boss, do you need reinforcements?" Li Nanheng answered, "Send someone to send old Madame Feng and the child back to the Feng family safely." "Don't you need reinforcements?" Li Nanheng did not answer. He hung up the phone because the two dogs approached. Chapter 14:22. As he spoke, Li Nanheng cast his gaze into the distance as if he had really quarreled with Feng Ling. The tall and thin man with the baseball bat couldn't hold it in any longer. Taking advantage of the few people walking back and forth near them, he approached in that direction again. Feng Ling faced Li Nanheng with her back to the two people behind her. She read the message from Li Nanheng's firm and good-looking chin and seemingly unmoved facial expression. They were coming. Just as Li Nanheng turned back to the driver and said with a smile that he wanted to borrow a cigarette, the tall and thin man had already swung the baseball bat at Feng Ling's back. The truck driver didn't realize what was going on. The lighter in his hand was suddenly snatched away by Li Nanheng, and then the lighter was thrown forward, rubbing against the baseball bat. With a bang sound, he held Feng Ling in his arms and pulled her into his arms. Before the man could react from the explosion, he turned around to the back of the truck and quickly took out the knife from Feng Ling's pocket. "Next time you encounter such a thing, remember to inform me immediately. If I didn't call you, were you going to settle it outside before going back?" Li Nanheng pressed Feng Ling firmly against the back of the truck, not letting her rush out. "If you want to beat someone up, just do it. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Feng Ling glared at him and was about to rush over to finish him off. However, as soon as she moved, she was quickly pressed back by the door of the truck. In the blink of an eye, she was in a stalemate with the man for half a second and understood what he meant. She had left the base for so long. He didn't want her to expose her skills in front of outsiders. It would be easy for her to be targeted. She slowly put down her hand, feeling somewhat helpless, and could only raise her chin in that direction. "All right, you go." Li Nanheng smiled in satisfaction and touched her head. "Stand here and don't move." With that, the man turned around and walked around the side of the truck. Then there was a collision sound. Without looking, she knew that the baseball bat had been successfully snatched by Li Nanheng. With his skills, those two pieces of trash were like mantises trying to stop a car. Originally, she wanted to tell Li Nanheng the situation over the phone, hoping that he would send someone to take the child away as soon as possible, but since he had come personally, there was no need for her to go out. Feng Ling called old Madame Feng again and confirmed that she was indeed in Li Nanheng's car. Only then did she relax. At the same time, she heard the truck driver's exclamation. She hung up the phone and walked out of the car. She saw that the tall and strong man who had just pounced over was almost sent flying by Li Nanheng's kick. With a loud bang, he crashed heavily into a flower bed in the neighborhood. The two of them were shocked and furious. After all, they didn't know the situation of the Feng family and the people around Feng Ling originally. They only wanted to deal with that woman, but they didn't expect such a powerful character to appear halfway. Moreover, that woman clearly had some skills. She didn't even need her help. "Who are you?" the tall and thin man asked with a cold expression. Li Nanheng did not answer. He raised his leg and flew up. Before the man could react, he let out a cry of pain and swept him to the ground. At the same time, he reached into his pocket but hesitated. It was not suitable to use a knife or a gun in a crowded place. In the end, he punched the man's head that had just been raised back to the ground, making a muffled sound. The other party's nose instantly bled. He fell to the ground in pain and covered his face. In the next moment, another person suddenly shouted and pounced over. Li Nanheng quickly dodged and hit him with his elbow. Feng Ling took a look and ignored them. Hearing that it was almost a physical fight, she called the Feng family. After explaining the situation, she put down the phone and turned back to see that the two people had fallen to the ground and could not get up. The sound of police cars was approaching. Li Nanheng glanced at Feng Ling leisurely and then turned back to look at the driver who was standing by the truck and slowly applauding in surprise. "You called the police?" The driver nodded and looked at Li Nanheng with admiration. Li Nanheng snorted and ignored the two people on the ground. It was good to call the police. It saved them the trouble of solving it themselves. Although they were just small characters, it involved the Wen family. The matter was dirty and troublesome. He walked back to the back of the car and saw that Feng Ling was standing there waiting for him. She had never been good at hiding behind others, but today, she was quite obedient. She knew that she was carrying the Feng family's reputation and safety on her shoulders and could not cause trouble in public. The two of them were only a meter apart until Li Nanheng said, "Go back to the Feng family." And go back to the Feng family. Feng Ling saw that the man was not even panting. It could be seen how useless those two were. On the way back. "You actually slipped away for so long with just these two trash. Don't you know how precious your time is? I wanted to send them away. After all, the elderly and children are in the amusement park. I didn't want to attract the attention of their accomplices. I wanted to lure them away, but you suddenly arrived." Feng Ling paused and said, "How precious is my time? I don't have a job right now. I'm so idle that I'm about to grow hair. How is it precious? Every minute and second of your time belongs to me. If you're free, you should stay at home and love me. Love each other." It was more like loving and killing each other in bed. Her life was almost gone because of him. Couldn't he let her run out to take a breather? Feng Ling ignored him. Li Nanheng leaned over and took a bite of her face. Feng Ling was speechless. "When we return to the Feng family, restrain yourself. Don't scare the elderly." "How?" "Don't kiss you in front of them. Don't be too enthusiastic. You're not a very enthusiastic person." "That depends on who I'm talking to. When have I not been enthusiastic about you and the people and things related to you?" Feng Ling couldn't refute. After thinking for a long time, it seemed that Li Nanheng would always have a different side in front of her and in front of others. Seeing that she didn't speak, Li Nanheng snorted as he drove. "All the fire on my body has been ignited on you." Feng Ling was embarrassed. "Focus on driving. Your eyes have just recovered, but you insist on driving. My safety is in your hands now. Even if I didn't get into trouble in the hands of those two stalkers, I'm afraid I'll die under your steering wheel. Watch the road. Don't keep looking at me." Even if Li Nanheng turned his head, the corner of his eyes did not leave the road ahead. He smiled and stopped at the pharmacy by the roadside for 2 minutes. When he returned, he threw her a box of Band-Aids. Feng Ling took it and glanced at it. Then she lowered her head and noticed that there was a small cut on her wrist. She had probably scratched a branch when she was running in the woods. It was not serious. It was a very small piece, but she still took it and stuck it on herself. Chapter 14:23. The Feng Family. Little Momo had no idea what had happened in the past few hours. After returning home, he drank some water and was brought to wash his hands by the helper. Then he was carried back to his room to sleep. When Grandfather Feng heard about the situation, his heart was in turmoil. He was worried that something would happen to the child in the Feng family. When Feng Ling and Li Nanheng returned and saw them enter the door, Grandfather Feng quickly said, "Can't you contact Wen Liqing? Right now, the so-called uncle of the Wen family is staring at the child. He must have some ulterior motive. We don't know the situation at all. If we leave the child here, something will happen sooner or later." "I know. If it really doesn't work, I'll bring the child to Los Angeles or put him in 11 base. After all, Wen Liqing and Dr. Wen used to be related to 11 base. Those brothers will definitely take good care of little Momo. There's no safer place than there." Before Grandfather Feng could speak, Grandmother Feng's eyes reddened. "It's indeed safe to send him there, but they're all men. How can they take care of the child?" From her words, she knew that the old lady couldn't bear to part with the child. Even if he wasn't her great-grandson, she had personally taken care of him for so long. There's nothing wrong with a boy going to the base when he's young. I'll tell a Feng to be gentle to the child. After all, Momo is indeed too young. Li Nanheng spoke up at the right time. "We're all in Los Angeles. We'll take better care of the child." Grandmother Feng nodded and sighed. "All right. Although I can't bear to, I was really scared today. If it weren't for you and Feng Ling, I don't know what would have happened. This child is so young. What if, then it's settled. Send him to the base in Los Angeles. We'll talk about the rest after we can contact the child's parents. Or, we can go back to Los Angeles to live," Grandfather Feng suddenly suggested. Feng Ling hadn't had the time to discuss this with them. She didn't expect the elder to take the initiative to return to Los Angeles. Feng Ling raised her eyes and turned to look at Li Nanheng. She saw a smile in Li Nanheng's eyes and was clearly very satisfied with the elder's suggestion. If the two elders of the Feng family also decided to return to Los Angeles with Feng Ling, the Feng and Li families would be able to contact each other often, and the elders would be able to hang out often. It would be very beneficial to their future love life. Grandmother Feng didn't seem to have thought of this. She was stunned for a moment before saying, "If we return to Los Angeles, Shook. The headquarters of the Feng Corporation is now in New York. Since Shook has taken over, let her stay in New York to develop at such a young age. In the future, if Feng Ling isn't busy, she can come back to help her occasionally." In addition, Shook's parents and family are also in Los Angeles. She will go back during the holidays. There's no problem. After speaking, Grandfather Feng turned his attention to Li Nanheng, who had been standing with Feng Ling since he'd entered the door. He looked at him seriously for a while and asked, "How have you been recently? Are your eyes healed?" Li Nanheng curved his lips and smiled politely at Grandfather Feng. "All right, thank you for your concern, Elder Feng." Looking at Li Nanheng, who was standing by Feng Ling's side, Elder Feng couldn't help but recall when the Feng family wanted Feng Mingzhu to marry him. At that time, Li Nanheng was definitely not as easy to talk to as he was now. Especially when it came to Feng Mingzhu, Li Nanheng had never been merciful or polite. At that time, when he arrived at the Feng family, it was as though there was something separating him from the Feng family. Just a faint glance from him made him shudder. But now that he had returned to the Feng family with Feng Ling, his brows were much gentler. He was no longer the arrogantly Nanheng. Grandfather Feng nodded and smiled. It's good that you're fine. You and Feng Ling have come together step by step for so many years. Although her grandmother and I haven't witnessed much, we know that you're unyielding. You can distinguish between liking and disliking you two clearly. The elder did not directly point it out, but he vaguely mentioned Li Nanheng's lukewarm attitude toward the Feng family. The smile on Li Nanheng's lips did not fade. His tone was very light. The difference between people is too obvious. Of course, you should distinguish between liking and disliking. Feng Ling raised her brows and glanced at him. Li Nanheng did not look at her, but it did not mean that he did not receive her gaze. His words were full of meaning. Grandfather Feng understood. Although both of them were his granddaughters, Feng Mingzhu had done too much wrong. If she had only made a mistake because of her personality, as a family, they would have tolerated and forgiven her. However, she was so wrong that even her parents had died. After being controlled by the police for so many years, the two of them had never visited her. However, she was still a granddaughter, and it was inevitable that their hearts would be hurt. Thankfully, Feng Ling was outstanding enough. Although Bai Gu was a little indifferent and didn't know how to act coquettishly in front of the elders, she was a child that they could rest assured about. In the past few years, the two of them had felt much better. Grandma Feng didn't want to think about those things anymore. She stood up and said, "We can go back to Los Angeles, but we can't enter the base. We don't know what happened to little Momo inside, the base is officially controlled. It's true that we can't casually enter. Even Ah Feng can't let us in," Feng Ling said. "But we can pick up the child every week and let you accompany him for a day and a half. After that, we can send him back. There will always be someone watching him. Is that okay?" All right, all right, all right. That's fine. We can guarantee the child's safety and let us see him occasionally. That's fine." The old lady smiled. The matter was settled, and Feng Ling's heart was finally at ease. She was originally worried that the two elders would be sad and frightened. She and Li Nanheng stayed at the Feng family's home for dinner. That night, Feng Ling planned to return to the condo to stay, but the two elders mentioned that they were preparing to move back to Los Angeles in the next few days. There were still many things to discuss with them, so she stayed at the Feng family's home. The Feng family's residence in New York was also a villa. There were many guest rooms. There were few people in the family, and there were many empty rooms. Li Nanheng could stay in any one of them for a night. Originally, Feng Ling thought that he would restrain himself on account that this was the Feng family. Who knew that when she came out of her room after taking a shower, she saw the man sitting on her bed. She turned to look at the closed bedroom door and then at the man sitting by the bed calmly. "How did you come in?" "I'm right next door. The balcony is close." The man raised his chin toward the balcony outside the window and raised his brows. Chapter 1424. Feng Ling. You really don't change. Li Nanheng was unmoved by her mockery. He watched as she came out wrapped in a towel after showering. "If I had known that you would be like this after showering, would have jumped over every day to watch you at the base." Feng Ling's expression faltered. She recalled that he lived next door to her in the base. At that time, the balcony outside was very close, and he could come over at any time. However, he, Boss Li, was very prideful. Almost every time, he knocked on the door openly and used all kinds of tricks. He didn't even let her off when she was a man. She did not speak and turned to pick up the hairdryer. Before she could dry her hair completely, she suddenly heard her phone ring. She walked out and picked up the phone to see that it was Qin Shuk. She picked it up. Shook. A resentful voice came from the other end. When are you coming back? Feng Ling's face was filled with confusion. Where are you going? Back to your apartment in New York. Brother-in-law has arranged for me to wait here for a day. It's already so late, but you still haven't come back. I'm about to die of boredom, okay? Qin Shuk said as she nibbled on the hamburger in her hand. Thankfully, there are a few restaurants near your house that can deliver takeout. I asked for something to eat. Otherwise, when you come back, you'll see me starving to death here. Feng Ling turned to look at Li Nanheng, who had clearly forgotten about Qin Shuk. You're at my place. I'm going back to the Feng family. I don't think I can go back tonight. Why don't you call a car to pick you up now? After a few seconds of silence, an angry voice suddenly came. F***CK. Where's Li Nanheng? Is he on your side? He's here. Ah, this bastard. He said he didn't know the password to your apartment and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to enter when he went back. He asked me to stay and watch the house. I've been guarding your place for so long, but the two of you went back to the Feng family freely, leaving me here alone to eat hamburgers. You're too much. Feng Ling coughed and lowered her voice to say, I encountered something outside today, so, I don't care. I don't want to listen to your explanation. Anyway, Li Nanheng offended me. I won't call him my cousin-in-law anymore. Qin Shuk hung up the phone angrily. Thinking about it, she still felt unhappy. Before she left, she saw the pair of men's slippers on the ground and stomped on them a few times before rushing out of the door. Feng Ling heard that the call had been hung up, put down the phone, and turned to look at Li Nanheng, who was sitting by the bed as though nothing had happened. You left Qin Shuk at home and left. You didn't even call her afterward to ask her to go home. Li Nanheng glanced at her, his attitude sincere and serious, without the slightest hint of remorse. Oh, she's still here. I don't have her number. Feng Ling, she was so angry that her temples were throbbing. This man was always irresponsible and unreliable to others. Feng Ling knew that Qin Shuk was probably angry right now. Based on her understanding of her, it would be at least 48 hours before she wanted to talk to them again. She lowered her head and held her phone, seriously sending a message to Qin Shuk to apologize. As she was sending the message, she suddenly felt a warm breeze on her hair that had not been completely dried. She turned her head and saw that Li Nanheng had gone to the bathroom to take out the hairdryer and was drying her hair. She glanced back at him. It's useless to coax me now. Qin Shuk is angry. And, what did she say? Li Nanheng didn't think much of it. He gently lifted her hair with his hand. He had never done such a thing before and didn't know how to blow it, but he still tried his best to keep the hairdryer at a certain distance from her hair and slowly blew it. She said she will never call you cousin-in-law again. Oh, she can call me whatever she wants. Anyway, the position of cousin-in-law belongs to me. Feng Ling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After sending the message, she turned around and snatched the hairdryer back. I'll blow it myself. Go back to the guest room to sleep. Li Nanheng had no intention of leaving. The guest room is too cold. It's summer now. Oh, then it's too hot. There's no air conditioning. How can there be no air conditioning? I sat on your bed for a while. It's quite soft. I should be able to sleep as soon as I touch the bed. I promise I'll only hug you to sleep. I definitely won't do anything to you in the Feng family, the man said confidently. It would be strange if she believed him. Feng Ling glared at him. You also know that this is the Feng family. My grandparents are already so old. They're not old people who can see through everything. If they find out that you're sleeping here, it's hard to say if they won't be angry. Hurry back to your guest room. I've been tormented by you for 2 to 3 days. Can't you let me sleep alone for a night? Knock, knock. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. Fong Ling paused and glared at Li Nanheng, indicating for him to quickly jump back from where he came from and tell him to quickly go next door. However, the man only took the hairdryer from her hand and turned to take it back to the bathroom. He had no intention of hiding at all. Fong Ling wanted to scold him, but the man had already gone to the bathroom. She couldn't call him now, or he would definitely hear her outside. She could only walk to the door and open it halfway. She saw the old lady standing outside. Grandma. When are you and Nanheng leaving for Los Angeles? The old lady saw that the door was only half open. Even though she couldn't see anything, she didn't push the door open. Instead, she stood outside the door and asked with a smile. In the next 2 days. This time, I came back to New York mainly to treat his eyes. I also accompanied Shu Cook to attend a dinner party set up by a few partners who helped the phone corporation. The itinerary is almost over. Seeing that she had no intention of coming in, Fong Ling released her hand from the door. Her previous reservations were gone. Then let's go back together. Your grandfather, your family's servants, and I will take a car alone. When we return to Los Angeles, the Fong family's relatives will come over to help pack up. You two don't have to trouble yourselves. Live well together. Besides, Nanheng isn't young anymore. It's time for you two to have an ending. Fong Ling looked at the old lady and nodded. I know. Chapter 1425. After chatting for a while, Grandmother Fong said that it was too late and wanted to return to her room to rest. When she went downstairs, a servant came up and brought the medicinal soup that had just been cooked. Old madam, this is for Mr. Li. Didn't he get injured some time ago? It's good for his health to drink more medicinal soup. Shall I send it up for him now? Grandmother Fong recalled that Fong Ling had only opened the door once and looked a little cautious. She smiled lightly and said, there's no need to send him off. It's already so late. It's hard to digest so much soup. Put it in the pot and let him drink it at breakfast tomorrow. The servant was stunned for a moment. When she saw the old lady's understanding expression, she immediately understood and smiled. All right, I'll put it back first. In the room, Fong Ling's eyes were a little red because of what her grandmother had said, but it was not obvious. When Li Nanheng walked over and saw her standing in front of the door, he walked over and rubbed her head before pulling her into his arms. I heard what the old lady said. Her heart really aches for you. You should be relieved that you're no longer the little wolf girl who doesn't have a family. You have a family, and your family will love you. Everyone acknowledges your excellence. That's enough. Fong Ling obediently stayed in his arms. After a while, she said, Grandma should know you're here. And then you can sleep here. Li Nanheng raised his brows. Before he could speak, he heard her say, remember what you said earlier. Just sleep. Don't move. He chuckled. A week later. Los Angeles. I didn't expect that although the people in the base are all rough men, they actually like children. Little Momo isn't afraid of strangers. When he knew that we were sending him over, he obediently allowed them to tease him. He didn't cry or make a fuss. Grandmother Fong sat in the car leaving the base with a relieved expression. Momo is young, but she is sensible. I remember that when Liqing was also a very sensible child back then. I just don't know what happened to her in the past few years. Grandfather Fong sighed and then looked back at the base that was getting further and further away. Recently, Li Nanheng's eyes had just recovered. He wanted to drive several times but was rejected by Fong Ling. On the way, Feng Ling drove while Li Nanheng sat in the passenger seat. Hearing the conversation between the two elders, he said mildly, "The Wen family isn't clean because of the grudges between the older generation. In all these years, the only ones who can be praised are Wen Liqing and Wen Linhan, the siblings with different personalities. Now that the two of them are missing and someone wants to take little Momo away, it's clear that there are many benefits involved. Sigh, this kind of thing is not rare in rich families. I just pity Momo. Everyone grows up in a different environment. It's all arranged by fate. Boys encounter more things when they're young, and they'll be more responsible when they grow up. Don't think too much about it." Madame Feng patted her shoulder. "Look at our Feng Ling. She encountered no less than Momo when she was young. She's so outstanding now." Feng Ling, who was focused on driving, was praised again. She was no longer as uncomfortable as before. Instead, she continued driving calmly and did not answer. Li Nanheng suddenly added, "And, so in the future, our child will definitely be as obedient as her." Feng Ling almost stepped on the accelerator as the brake. Her expression instantly changed from calm to strange. The atmosphere between the two elders of the Feng family suddenly fell silent for a few seconds. Then, they suddenly burst into laughter. "Then when do the two of you plan to give birth?" That's right, that's right. Can't you tell how much we like children? We can dote on little Momo so much. If you quickly give birth to one, we can help you look after the child in the future." Feng Ling, Li Nanheng nodded. "It's not just one. I don't think it's enough to give birth to two. Otherwise, the elders on both sides won't be able to take their turn." Right, then let's give birth to a few more. It's that Jean Wan, right? The Mrs. Mo that Feng Ling often mentions to us. Didn't she just give birth to a boy and a girl? I heard that she's pregnant again recently, right? Feng Ling, Nanheng, you guys have to work harder. Feng Ling, are you sure you want to return to High City before getting married? Li Nanheng glanced at the booked flight time and venue on his phone and hugged Feng Ling, who had just spoken to Jean Wan on the phone, into his arms. Jean Wan is already 2 months pregnant. I should visit her. Feng Ling put her phone aside. Didn't you say that you haven't had a good relationship with me for so many years? I'm respecting your thoughts and decided to find a quiet place to take a walk. There are many familiar people in High City. Compared to America, it's safer in terms of security. It's been a long time since you last met up with Mr. Mo and Dr. Qin. I'll take this opportunity to see Jean Wan. Isn't she vomiting every day? Does she have the energy to see you? I don't need her to accompany me. I'm just going to take a look. It's true that I haven't returned to High City for a long time. Jean Wan said that her pregnancy this time was even worse than the last time she was pregnant with an In and Ning Ning. At that time, the 2 little babies were very quiet in her stomach and basically didn't torture her. This time, however, she vomited heavily every morning, causing Mr. Mo to be late for work every day. He insisted on watching over her at home until she got over the discomfort of her morning sickness. Only then could he leave the Yu Garden with peace of mind. Although there were Auntie Chin and many people at home to help take care of the children, Anin and Ningning were used to being by their parents' side and always liked to be with them. It was said that every night, Mr. Mo had to lie between the 2 children and tell them at least 3 stories before they were willing to sleep. Moreover, Ningning always liked to hug her father's thigh to sleep, and Anin liked to hug her mother's stomach to sleep. As time passed, this became a habit. Recently, Jean Wan had just become pregnant and had to take good care of her stomach, so she had to battle wits with the 2 little guys every night. The longer she tossed around before going to bed, the more she vomited the next morning. The doctor said that Jean Wan's reaction in the early stages of pregnancy could not be controlled with medicine, but after the first 3 months, she would improve. Seeing that there was only 1 month left, in order to calm his wife down, Mr. Mo simply sent an enrich to the Mo family and let the 2 children torment Elder Mo. Elder Mo was very happy. He was willing to tell 10 stories every night. Jean Wan was quiet, but she missed the children every night. During pregnancy, she was easily agitated and would occasionally cry, which scared Mr. Mo so much that he moved back to the Mo family with Jean Wan and the servants. In this way, the children would be accompanied by the elder, and Jean Wan could also see the children. Everyone was happy. Fong Ling felt that it was necessary for her to see the 2 cute and clingy little guys and let Li Nanheng experience the atmosphere of being a father in advance. Chapter 1426. High City, Airport. Jean Wan sat on a bench at the exit of the airport, crying with snot and tears. She had been crying for a full 10 minutes. Mo Jingshan coaxed her for a full 10 minutes. In the end, he called Auntie Chin, who had followed him, to buy a cup of sweet milk for her to drink. Jean Wan was still sobbing as she drank the sweet milk. She turned her head away and ignored him. Auntie Chin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fong Ling and Li Nanheng walked out of the safety gate of the customs passage. When they walked to the exit, they saw this scene. Yo, why did you quarrel at the airport? Li Nanheng put one hand in his trouser pocket and walked over. Fong Ling saw that Jean Wan was crying and thought that something had happened. After all, the Jean Wan she knew was not a person who liked to cry. Even if she was really unhappy, she was a person who could endure it. Why did she sit here and cry? What's wrong? What happened? Fong Ling leaned forward and saw that Jean Wan's eyes were still red. Jean Wan took a look at her and sniffled. It seemed that she had cried too much and couldn't speak for a while. Mo Jingshan, who was sitting by the side, took a look at Li Nanheng. How do your eyes feel recently? Li Nanheng curved his lips. Not bad. A few days after the surgery, they were a little blurry. These days, they've recovered a lot. Other than the occasional pain and itchiness when I overuse my eyes, they're no different from before. What did Dr. Yurko say? He said that she still needs external massage for at least 2 months, but now it basically doesn't affect her life. Li Nanheng glanced at Jean Wan as he spoke. Why? Did you make your wife cry? Auntie Chen stood by the side and quickly said, It's because after Mrs. Mo got pregnant this time, I don't know what kind of little ancestor she's pregnant with. Ever since she got pregnant, her emotions and temper have been especially sensitive. I think it's because the morning sickness this time was too severe and caused her to suffer. If she doesn't eat the things she likes to eat, she will want to cry. Just now, Mrs. Mo saw that there was a milk tea shop selling there and said that she wanted to drink milk tea. Mr. Mo thought that milk tea was not good for her in the early stages of pregnancy, so he didn't let her drink it. In the end, Mrs. Mo has been crying ever since. Li Nanheng, Fong Ling, Li Nanheng glanced at Jean Wan, who was still angrily drinking sweet milk and ignoring Mo Jingshan. Is a pregnant woman so scary? Mo Jingshan, on the other hand, was calm. He glanced at him indifferently. When Fong Ling is pregnant, you can feel it yourself. Fong Ling, our Fong Ling doesn't like to cry so much. Besides, it's just a cup of milk tea, so what? There are no real tea leaves in the milk tea outside. Don't mistreat your wife's mouth. Li Nanheng said as he looked around to see if there was a place that sold milk tea. For Jean Wan's sake, he planned to buy a cup for her. After all, this woman's eyes were red when she cried, and she looked really pitiful. Oh, Mr. Li, you haven't become a father yet. You don't understand these things. Mrs. Mo really can't drink these things now. Besides, when a woman is pregnant, she is always very greedy. Recently, she has eaten a lot of junk food because of her gluttony. Mr. Mo is also doing this for his own good. Before Auntie Chen finished speaking, Jean Wan had already burst into tears again. She leaned her head against Feng Ling's arms and cried out in grievance. Mo Jingshan turned back to look at her. Seeing that she had actually gone to find Feng Ling to act coquettishly, he was so helpless that the veins on his forehead bulged. Then he received Li Nanheng's cold and mocking gaze. Mo Jingshan coldly glanced at him. He did not speak, but his gaze was clearly saying, "Don't be anxious. You're almost at this step." Auntie Chen smiled helplessly by the side, as though she had long been used to it. Women are very fragile when they are pregnant. Recently, Mr. Mo didn't allow her to hug Anan and Ning Ning to sleep. As a mother, her psychology must have been affected. It's inevitable that she will be emotional during pregnancy. Mrs. Mo's temper is so good. When she is pregnant, she will occasionally quarrel with Mr. Mo and act coquettishly. It's quite cute. Hearing that Auntie Chen actually said she was cute, Jean Wan cried even louder. I'm already a child's mother. What else can I love? With that, she continued to cry. Feng Ling was a little dazed by Jean Wan's crying. She quickly patted her shoulder. All right, don't cry. If you continue to cry, I don't dare to imagine what it will be like when I am pregnant in the future. You rarely cry in the past. Is pregnancy so uncomfortable? Jean Wan suddenly stopped crying. She raised her head from Feng Ling's arms and looked at her with a pair of red eyes for a while. Then she sniffed and stepped back. She then turned back to take a few tissues from Auntie Chen's hand. After wiping her nose, she looked at Feng Ling with red eyes and then at her stomach. She asked in a nasal tone, "Are you pregnant?" Feng Ling immediately looked a little embarrassed. No. Then she paused and said doubtfully, "I don't think I'm pregnant." During this period of time, she and Li Nanheng had been doing it quite frequently, and they hadn't taken any contraceptive measures. In the past, he had basically been careful every time. Even when they were in the jungle, he respected her wishes and didn't take it in. But now, cough. Feng Ling wasn't sure if she was pregnant. Anyway, she didn't seem to notice any signs of pregnancy. At the very least, she really didn't have any reactions like Jean Wan's vomiting and crying. Jean Wan sobbed again. She looked at Feng Ling's face and muttered, "You're too thin. It's not easy to get pregnant. You have to eat more." Feng Ling chuckled. Chapter 14:27. Finally, he coaxed Jean Wan, who had been clamoring for a cup of milk tea, back to the car. Li Nanheng sat in the car and rubbed between his eyebrows, feeling that he had been keeping a distance from women for so many years. Women were really *king troublesome. But his Feng Ling should be fine. She didn't have too many women's emotions in her bones. On the way back, Jean Wan still refused to talk to Mo Jingshan. She sat in the back and chatted with Feng Ling. One moment, they talked about Feng Ling in the United States, and the next moment, they talked about Anan and Ning Ning. When it came to the children, Jean Wan was finally diverted by the brilliance of motherly love. She happily took out her cell phone to show Feng Ling the photos of the children. The two children were almost 3 years old. They were very fair and cute. Anan was a boy and really looked like his father. It could be seen that when he grew up, he would definitely be a handsome boy on the same level as Mr. Mo. Ning Ning looked very much like Jean Wan. She had Jean Wan's cuteness and Mr. Mo's innate cold aura. When she grew up, she would definitely be a cute little beauty with an extremely cold appearance. Feng Ling had seen these photos before. After becoming a mother, Jean Wan was really crazy about showing off the children. She would occasionally send photos of the children to Mo Jingshan. However, there were still many photos she hadn't seen. Feng Ling held her cell phone and looked at them all the way. However, because of Jean Wan's morning sickness, the car was forced to stop about 3 times. Every time, Jean Wan pushed the door open and got out of the car uncomfortably. She ran to the side of the road and bent over to vomit for a long time. Sometimes she spat out some water, and sometimes she just retched. Every time the car stopped, Mr. Mo would personally accompany her to get off the car. He stood by her side, wiped her mouth, handed her water, patted her on the back, and held her in his arms to comfort her. Whenever she was in pain, Mr. Mo would pat her on the back and comfort her in his arms. Whenever Auntie Chin really needed help, Auntie Chin couldn't do anything but continue to sit in the car and stare at the driver. Anyway, they were used to it. Mr. Mo always doted on Mrs. Mo. Although he was going to be a mother for the 2nd time, he still doted on her like a little girl. Jean Wan was treated almost the same as An and Ning Ning. They were the 3 treasures in Mo Jingshan's eyes. Jean Wan, on the other hand, was so uncomfortable that she pushed Mo Jingshan in his arms several times. Mo Jingshan patiently coaxed her. Before returning to the car, he held her in his arms, kissed her sweaty forehead, and said something in her ear. Jean Wan was no longer angry with him. She obediently leaned in his arms and let him pat her back to ease her vomiting so that she wouldn't continue to feel nauseous. After coaxing her back to the car, Mo Jingshan asked the driver to drive and asked Auntie Chin to put a backrest behind Jean Wan so that she could lean more comfortably. After a while, Jean Wan fell asleep leaning against Mo Jingshan. Li Nanheng was very puzzled by this scene. He looked at Feng Ling, who had been sitting calmly in the back with him, and the 2 of them looked at each other. They had all seen with their own eyes how Jean Wan cooked for the brothers in the base in the Cambodian camp after she was pregnant. She went deep into the enemy's camp to deliver food and water to Mo Jingshan, pretending to be deaf and dumb, and cooperated with those desperados. Step by step, she walked out of the dragon's pool and tiger's den safely with Mo Jingshan. At that time, Jean Wan's temper was not as bad as it was now. So, Auntie Chen's little pregnancy lesson began again in the car. Seeing Jean Wan fall asleep by Mo Jingshan's side, Auntie Chen felt bored sitting in the car, so she began to talk about all kinds of pregnancy knowledge. She also said that every pregnancy of a woman was different because of her physique and various aspects. Many elderly people said that pregnant boys and girls had different reactions during pregnancy. Some had very big reactions, and some didn't feel anything as if they were not pregnant at all. Auntie Chen also said that Jean Wan was in a bad mood today because she vomited several times on the way to the airport. It was too uncomfortable, so when she arrived at the airport, she asked for a cup of iced milk tea. After being refused, she sat there aggrievedly. Just now, she was vomiting and carsick after pregnancy. It was too uncomfortable, and it was normal for her to be sleepy. After hearing Auntie Chen's words, Li Nanheng and Feng Ling chose not to say anything in the car, lest they woke up the little devil next to Mo Jingshan and continued to cry and vomit, making everyone restless. Feng Ling felt a little guilty. If she had known that Jean Wan was so pregnant, she wouldn't have asked her to come to the airport to pick her up. When she heard Jean Wan insist on coming to pick her up on the phone, she didn't refuse. Now it seemed that she really made Jean Wan suffer a lot. When the car arrived in downtown High City, Jean Wan woke up. After sleeping, she felt much better. Because Feng Ling and Mo Jingshan came to High City, she didn't plan to let them stay in a hotel. After waking up, she invited them to stay in the U Garden, the Mo family, Uehu Bay, or Ao Lan International. In short, since they had returned to High City, there was no need for them to stay in a hotel. However, Li Nanheng said indifferently, no need. It's not like I don't have a place in High City. Back then, when I was in High City in the United States, my men had already bought a residence here. I won't go to your place and disturb your small world of four. Feng Ling didn't speak but said in her heart, I'm afraid you don't want to be stimulated by Mr. Mo's family of four. After all, other people's children already knew how to play soy sauce. Li Nanheng had been jealous of him several times in the United States. Feng Ling understood him quite well. No, it's rare for the three of you to come back to High City in recent years. You must go out to drink. How can Feng Ling and I stay in our own homes? You and Qin Siding can go wherever you want. I'll go to Feng Ling's place tonight. Jin Wan said and looked at Mo Jingshan. I'll get off the car with them in a while. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows. Well, he didn't go to the Yew Garden to be the third wheel, but here, there was a crying girl who took the initiative to be his third wheel. Feng Ling didn't refuse. She also turned to look at Mo Jingshan. Mr. Mo, can I? Mo Jingshan glanced at Jin Wan. Seeing her expression as if she would run away from home with the child if he didn't agree, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All right, I don't need to worry about you going to Feng Ling's place, but don't spend the night. When you're done chatting with her tonight, I'll pick you up. Before Jin Wan spoke, Feng Ling felt this was the most appropriate. Since Mr. Mo could agree, Jin Wan didn't need to be rejected. Feng Ling directly agreed. All right, then it's settled. Jin Wan, Li Nanheng, neither of them spoke. How could it be settled? Auntie Chen sat in the car and silently played with her fingers. She couldn't participate in the conversation between young people. She'd better find a chance to teach them about pregnancy. Chapter 1428. The sky gradually darkened. Sure enough, Li Nanheng and Mo Jingshan directly called Qin Siding out. After a brief greeting, the three men went out to have fun and drink. Li Nanheng's residence in High City was in a very secluded community in the south of the city. It was located in the southernmost part of a townhouse. The environment was good, the air was good, and there were not many people coming and going. Usually, all kinds of luxury cars could be seen going in and out of the community. No one knew where these big shots came from, but those who could live here were indeed not ordinary. No wonder Li Nanheng always went to High City in the past few years. It turns out that he already has a place to live here. Jin Wan stood on the balcony and looked at the balcony that had just been cleaned. There was no dust or dirt, but because this place had been empty for too long, it was inevitable that there was a long-accumulated smell of dust. She could only open the floor-to-ceiling windows wide and breathe in the night air outside. He probably hasn't lived here for many years. Although it has just been cleaned, your nose is too sensitive now. If you are not used to it, let's go out and find a place to eat. Let's not eat here, Feng Ling said as she walked to the balcony. No, I'm not used to it. It's just that I've been angry with Mo Jingshan recently, so no matter how I look at him these days, I don't like him. Jin Wan sat down on the wooden rocking chair placed on the balcony and then touched her flat lower abdomen. I've only been pregnant for a few days this time, but Mo Jingshan threw Mo Shaoxin to the Mo family. I'm so angry. Feng Ling. Mo Shaoxin. Who? Oh, I'm talking about a cat. We've raised this cat for more than a year. At first, he was quite averse to it. Later, he gradually helped me raise it, but suddenly I got pregnant. Without saying anything, he sent the cat away. Luckily, he only sent him to the Mo family. I can still visit him often. If he dared to send Mo Shaoxin somewhere else, I would definitely not live with him anymore. Anyway, she was too familiar with Feng Ling, so she didn't have to care too much about her image. She rocked here and there comfortably, feeling the cool night breeze. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Feng Ling, who was standing by the window on the balcony. She had not been in the base for so many years, but she was still standing quietly and upright. She was delicate and had long hair. From afar, she looked like a beautiful white jade statue. "When are you getting married?" Jin Wan asked. After all, it was summer in High City. It was a very hot time. Feng Ling also felt that the night breeze was slightly cold, but it was very comfortable. Behind her was the warm yellow light from the window, and outside was the rows of green scenery of the park. Feng Ling glanced at her. "The old people on both sides will come out to drink tea and walk birds every day. The only thing they lack is a legal marriage seal. Besides, getting married in America is just registering it. They just need to take some time to register it. They haven't thought about when it will be. Maybe one day, when they have nothing to do, they might just go." Feng Ling glanced at her. "You don't have anything to do." Jin Wan continued to lie there and rocked. She nodded. "And, that's good. Your relationship has reached the point where you won't leave him, so there's no need for too many superficial things. Especially you and Li Nanheng, you've also experienced life and death together. It's been so many years. Any day is fine. As long as you can live peacefully in the future, it's fine." With that, Jin Wan glanced at her again. "You're not going back to the base?" "I don't think so." Feng Ling smiled. "But I can occasionally go there as the young madam of the Li family. After all, it's the Li family's territory." Seeing the relief in Feng Ling's eyes, Jin Wan smiled. "That's fine. You've become the young madam of the Li family from a small soldier in the base. Who is the current person in charge of the base?" "I don't know much about him." "His name is Ah Feng, right?" "I don't remember where I heard it." "Yes, his name is Ah Feng. In the end, he didn't even live as well as you. In contrast, I covet his position as the person in charge of the base more." Feng Ling casually pulled the window behind her to prevent mosquitoes from flying in and said, "When I go back one day, I'll discuss with Ah Feng. I'll be the person in charge of the base and give him the position of the young madam of the Li family." Jin Wan was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to react. When she came back to her senses, she found that Feng Ling, who used to be taciturn, was now able to tell corny jokes and especially liked to make fun of Li Nanheng. The two women chatted and laughed on the balcony for a long time, but at 10 o'clock in the evening, the three men were still chatting outside and had no intention of coming back. The two of them were happy and at ease. The two of them went out to buy food and came back to cook together. They only cooked 2 bowls of noodles and were very satisfied. Because Jin Wan was pregnant, Feng Ling specially bought a lot of fresh fruits and cut them in front of her for her to eat. After Jin Wan was pregnant, her mouth was really busy. Of course, she was very happy to have fruits to eat. They chatted until midnight. It was almost 11 o'clock. Jin Wan leaned against the rocking chair and was about to fall asleep. All of a sudden, Feng Ling hurried out of the bathroom and gently tugged at the blanket on her. Jin Wan opened her eyes and looked at her in a daze. "What's the matter?" "I've been thinking about going back to High City in Los Angeles for the past 2 days and forgot. Today, I found out that my period has been late for almost a week this month." Feng Ling said as she lowered her head to look at Jin Wan, who was still lying on the rocking chair. It's normal for your period to be late for a month, isn't it?" Jin Wan suddenly woke up. She looked at her with wide eyes and then picked up her phone to check the time. "It's so late. I wonder if there's anyone in the blood test department and the obstetrics and gynecology department in the hospital." Hearing her words, Feng Ling's expression froze. Obstetrics and Gynecology Department? Then she saw Jean Wan calmly lift the blanket on her, sit up straight in the rocking chair, clear her throat, pick up her phone, and poke the screen a few times. Before Fong Ling could see what she was doing, Jean Wan had already put the phone to her ear. A few seconds later, she said into the phone, "Hey, Li Nanheng, your wife and child are in my hands now. If you don't hand Mo Jingshan back to me as soon as possible, I'll take your fiancé and unborn child to Syria to sell essential oil soap." Fong Ling, on the other side of the phone, Li Nanheng. Ling Li's story should be sweet with the little wolf cubs for a day or two, then it's about to end. I thank everyone for their love on behalf of little Fong Ling and Liera. After Ling Li's story ends, it will continue with Mr. Qin's story. Ling Li's story is about a passionate collision between a hot-blooded man dressed as a woman, and Mr. Qin's story should be a different style of serious romance. I hope everyone will like it as always. Chapter 1429. On the other side, in a secluded luxury private room of a certain club, seeing Li Nanheng's stunned expression, Qin Siding casually flicked his cigarette and glanced at him. "What's wrong?" After speaking on the other side of the phone, he hung up without hesitation, throwing out a huge smoke bomb for no reason. Even someone as agile as Li Nanheng was stunned for a few minutes. Just now, Mo Jingshan's crying spirit said, "Speak properly." Mo Jingshan put down the transparent square cup in his hand and looked at him indifferently. "What did Jean Wan say?" Qin Siding smiled. "Jean Wan said that my wife and child are now in her hands. If you don't hand Mo Jingshan back as soon as possible, she will take my wife and child to Syria." Li Nanheng repeated what someone else had said with an inexplicable expression. He then looked at the two of them. Did this woman's paranoia act up after she got pregnant? Mo Jingshan didn't comment. Compared with many people who talk nonsense, Jean Wan's words are 100% credible. Li Nanheng's breath stopped. So. Qin Siding also picked up the cup on the crystal coffee table, rubbed his slender fingers against the cup, and said meaningfully, "She is reminding you that your wife is pregnant." Li Nanheng, Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng. After pondering for 3 seconds, Li Nanheng's expression changed very quickly. He threw the ice cubes from the ice bucket next to the wine cup into the glass with a lot of wine, stopped drinking, and left. However, as soon as he walked to the door of the private room, he remembered what Jean Wan said on the phone and suddenly looked back at Mo Jingshan, who was sitting leisurely on the sofa. "Old Mo, come with me." Mo Jingshan's elegant brows moved slightly. "Me?" Li Nanheng didn't say much. He stepped forward and pulled Mo Jingshan up as if he were going to kidnap him. Mo Jingshan didn't struggle but just glanced at him as if he were crazy. Li Nanheng pulled him away, but then he thought about it and looked back at Qin Siding, who looked at him as if saying, "You'd better leave quickly. I'm happy to have some peace and quiet. You come with me." Qin Siding. "Where am I going?" "Give my Fong Ling a checkup. There's a doctor here. It's a waste not to use him." With that, Li Nanheng gave Qin Siding a look, signaling him to follow quickly. Qin Siding, Jean Wan never expected that her husband was really kidnapped by Li Nanheng all the way back. After arriving at Li Nanheng's villa in High City, Fong Ling, who had been muttering, "It's just that her period is a few days late. It's impossible for her to be pregnant so soon." Li Nanheng had already picked her up from the balcony and brought her into the living room. That's right, he was being flattered. At the same time, Li Nanheng also pushed her husband onto the balcony, which could be considered as fulfilling her request. She directly exchanged Mo Jingshan with him. At that time, Jean Wan was still lying on the rocking chair, watching her husband being dragged back by Li Nanheng without even putting on a coat. Looking at the man's condescending expression, she thought of the cat that was sent to the Mo family, and an En and Ning Ning who hadn't hugged her to sleep for several days. Jean Wan turned her head away as if she had a backbone. Mo Jingshan walked over. You've been at loggerheads with me for several days. Haven't you calmed down? Jean Wan timidly adopted a Cold War strategy. She didn't speak to show that she really hadn't calmed down. Mo Jingshan chuckled, bent over, and suddenly pressed her down on the rocking chair. Jean Wan was caught off guard and was pressed down by him. Although the man was careful not to press down on her flat abdomen, he still pressed her whole body into the rocking chair. The rocking chair swayed back and forth for a long time without stopping. The man was on top of her, one hand on the armrest of the rocking chair, the other holding her chin, forcing her to raise her eyes to meet his. As soon as she met the man's eyes, Jean Wan's heart trembled. She wanted to avoid him but couldn't. She seemed to be locked under him. She turned to look inside the window. Get up. There are several people here. If they see us. We're legally married. What will happen if they see us? Get up first. Who was the one who said on the phone that you wanted someone to bring your husband back in exchange? You finally got me back, and now you continue to ignore me with a cold face. Mo Jingshan's hand on her chin was not heavy. It was almost a gentle caress. Seeing that she was lying motionless in the rocking chair, and seeing that she was still holding back her anger, he smiled and kissed her on the lips. All right, when the pregnancy period is over 3 months, I'll have someone send the cat back to you, but be careful not to hold the cat. Although it is very clean, you should pay attention to what you should pay attention to. Seeing that he was willing to let her take the cat back, Jean Wan finally looked better. In fact, it's really nothing. It's just that Auntie Chen nagged you all day that you should avoid cats and dogs around you during pregnancy. I've been very careful and won't easily joke about my and the child's health. You've fed it for so long. Aren't you afraid that it won't be used to the dried fish you feed it every morning after returning to the Mo family? If it gets angry and doesn't eat, what if it gets sick from hunger? If the cat gets sick, it will. As far as I know, it not only eats dried fish in the morning at the Mo family, but now it even has 3 meals a day. I'm afraid it won't be happy to take it back now. I don't care. That's my cat. Without my permission, can you raise a cat at home? And you even gave it such a stupid name. No matter how stupid it is, it's only one word different from your name. Besides, aren't you already used to it? You clearly like it. I've seen you secretly feed it dried fish every morning. On the balcony, the Mo couple quarreled fiercely. From Mo Xiaoshan's name to whether An and Ning Ning could sleep in the same bed with Jean Wan, to not allowing her to drink milk tea at the airport, they never stopped. Through the window, Feng Ling was pressed down on the sofa by the man who suddenly came back and carried her to the sofa without saying a word. She was not without feet. He suddenly came back and carried her away. What was going on? Qin's sighting was poached by Li Nanheng in the end. In the end, Qin's sighting was poached over by Li Nanheng. Seeing Feng Ling's expression, he sighed helplessly. Forget it, he had made a bad friend. He could only admit defeat. Thankfully, Qin's sighting was a professional doctor. Although he was not an obstetrician, he was proficient in both Chinese and Western medicine. He asked Li Nanheng to go to the pharmacy to buy a stethoscope. He occasionally listened to her heart and then checked her heart rate. Finally, he put away the stethoscope and said lightly, "Call the Li family's 4 elders." Chapter 1430. Feng Ling, ? Li Nanheng glanced at Qin's sighting. What call? Tell them that old Li's family has a descendant. Qin's sighting glanced at Feng Ling calmly. Before he could say what to pay attention to during pregnancy, Li Nanheng had already looked at Feng Ling dreamily. Feng Ling also looked at him dreamily as though it was unrealistic. As soon as their eyes met, Feng Ling didn't know where the awkwardness came from. It was probably because Dr. Qin was watching in front of her. She quickly looked away but only felt that her heart was beating faster. She was pregnant just like that. From the looks of it, Feng Ling is still in the early stages of pregnancy, which is about 4 weeks. You can find time to go to the hospital for a checkup in the next few days to determine the specific number of weeks, Qin Siding said mildly. Don't eat raw and cold things. Don't eat things that promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis. You're forbidden to have sex in the first 3 months of pregnancy. Feng Ling, she had taken care of Jean Wan when she was pregnant and knew some things to pay attention to, but when this matter fell on her, she suddenly understood why Jean Wan was sensitive and irritable as soon as she was pregnant. She had been restricted too much, and her pregnancy reaction was uncomfortable. All aspects added together would definitely be different from usual. But why didn't she have any pregnancy reaction? But I don't feel nauseous, nor do I feel very sleepy. Everyone's physique is different, and their reaction during pregnancy is also different. Some people have a big reaction in the first 3 months, some people have a big reaction in the first 2 months, and some people will vomit for 10 months after pregnancy. Some people have no feeling at all. This is not important. After going to the hospital for a checkup, confirm that the embryo is stable, and rule out the ectopic pregnancy. Then you can rest assured and wait for the monthly checkup. With that, Qin Siding glanced at Li Nanheng. No sex in the first 3 months. This sentence is for you. Feng Ling. Find a hole to hide in. Thank you. Li Nanheng, on the other hand, returned to his senses from the great joy and was overjoyed. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Siding and Imo Jingshan were here, he would definitely press Feng Ling onto the sofa and kiss her hard. I'm really pregnant. Li Nanheng couldn't hide the excitement of being a father. I'm going to be a father too. Feng Ling coughed. Do you not believe Dr. Qin, or, I think he doubts himself? Qin Siding chuckled softly. He's tied you to his side for so many years, and only now did you get pregnant. I even suspect that there's something wrong with him. Scram. Li Nanheng directly threw a word over. I have been very careful not to give her any chance to be in trouble. This is called tolerance. Understand? Unlike you, who slept with a woman and ran away with your seed. You only found out when your own daughter is about to learn how to play soy sauce. You have the nerve to mock me. Feng Ling hurriedly grabbed the pillow on the sofa and approached Li Nanheng. She pressed the pillow against his face to prevent him from speaking. She turned back to Qin Siding and hurriedly said, Ignore him. He smells of alcohol. I think he's talking nonsense after drinking too much. Li Nanheng slapped the pillow down and saw that Feng Ling was standing in front of him. His eyes inadvertently glanced at her flat and slender abdomen under her clothes. He changed his tone and said, In the future, slow down when you stand up. Don't stand up so suddenly. After all, you're still pregnant. Don't make my heart palpitate, Feng Ling, it's not that exaggerated. Qin Siding sneered. As expected, only you can control him. After you get married, dampen his spirit. Don't let this brat Nanheng be too arrogant. Otherwise, if your child is a daughter, he may dote on her. If it's a son, I'm afraid he'll throw him to the base. Furthermore, he'll be very domineering. You can't let him be. Otherwise, you won't be able to control him in the future. Li Nanheng was about to speak when Feng Ling hit his face with the pillow again. She had already begun to control Li Nanheng. 2 months later. Feng Ling, who had been in China for more than 2 months, had learned a lot of Chinese cooking skills from Jean Wan. Auntie Chen had also taught Feng Ling how to make dumplings and glutinous balls. The 4 elders of the Li family and the 2 elders of the Feng family had already learned of Feng Ling's pregnancy. Originally, they planned to bring them back and let them get married as soon as possible. However, Feng Ling felt that they could register their marriage first, so she asked the elders to help them register their marriage in America. Then, she sent some forms that needed their signature to be signed to China. After signing them, she sent them back. In less than half a month, the place in charge of marriage registration in America already had their names. Just like that, they got married without any trouble. Perhaps because they had been together for so many years, and because Li Nanheng had married the second miss of the Feng family, Li Nanheng had long determined that she was his wife. Thus, such a marriage registration was just a piece of paper to him. However, after confirming that it had been successfully registered, it was equivalent to Feng Ling being his legal wife in the future. However, he hadn't had the time to prepare for the proposal, and the wedding hadn't been decided yet. Feng Ling said that she didn't need these things. In addition, she finally had some pregnancy symptoms recently. Every day, she always wanted to sleep, and when she woke up, she would retch for a while. Although it wasn't as serious as Jean Wan's, it was indeed uncomfortable. In the end, she simply compromised. Even if she wanted to do these things, she would wait until after she gave birth. Right now, she definitely didn't want to go through too much trouble, nor did she want to wear those beautiful wedding gowns that had a body-binding effect to bind her stomach. There had to be a proposal and a wedding, but it didn't matter if they waited for a few months. After all, they had to give her the best. If they were too anxious, it would be too rushed. After the child was born, the 6 elders would appear together to attend their wedding. That scene would be even more perfect and happy. Furthermore, at their wedding, because of the appearance of the child, there would be one more family member by Feng Ling's side. Feng Ling had too few family members. In the future, their child and him would be the most important and closest people in her life. It was precisely because Feng Ling was pregnant that Li Nanheng usually gave in to her. Now that she was pregnant, he did whatever she said. When his wife said she wanted to go east, Boss Li didn't care about his past reputation. Whoever dared to ask him to go west, he would be angry with them. Feng Ling said that the 2 of them had been in the United States for so many years and had too few peaceful days. Since they had returned to China, they should travel around the country and see the great rivers and mountains in China. Thus, Li Nanheng brought Feng Ling to Mia to see the sea view, to Sichuan to eat hot pot, to Qingzhou to eat ramen, to Zhejiang to eat raisins, to the northern desert to see the grasslands, and to Changbai Mountain to eat dumplings. Chapter 1431. Feng Ling's love for hot pot was the same as before. In the past 2 months, she had gone to so many places. In the end, she still chose to return to Sichuan. However, because of her pregnancy, Li Nanheng only allowed her to eat hot pot twice a week. Furthermore, it had to be slightly spicy. If it was too spicy, she had to be soaked in water before she could eat it. The hot pot had to have both meat and vegetables. Even if it was a hot pot, she had to pay attention to nutrition. The man who was as agile as a leopard in front of the terrorists turned into a nagging spirit every day. Most importantly, when did he exchange phone numbers with Auntie Chin? He actually called Auntie Chin to ask about the various things a woman should pay attention to after pregnancy, as well as how to take care of her emotions, her physical and mental health, diet, and other aspects. One time, Feng Ling happened to hear that Boss Li was listening to Auntie Chen's teaching on the other side of the phone. He even took notes. She looked at the notes that were written down. Those bold and powerful words made her speechless. Ever since Qin's sighting gave the order that in the first 3 months of pregnancy, he was not allowed to touch Feng Ling before the 12th week of pregnancy, Li Nanheng was like an old monk. Every day, he only cared about her diet and daily life, but when she slept, he definitely did not dare to act rashly. However, as soon as the 3-month spell was lifted, on the night Feng Ling was 12 weeks pregnant, Li Nanheng went to the bathroom to wash himself up and rubbed Feng Ling into his arms. Feng Ling wanted to say that even if it had already been 3 months, she still had to be careful. However, Li Nanheng insisted that Qin's sighting and the obstetricians in the hospital had said that it would be fine after 3 months. She just had to be careful not to indulge too much. She pointed at the light in the bedroom and swore that she would be gentler. Then she buried her head in his chest and sighed, saying that after the child was born, they would probably be like Mo Jingxian and Jin Wan. They would often be pestered by the child to sleep on the same bed. Their small world would only become smaller and smaller. Right now, they needed to cherish it. In the end, Feng Ling could not stand this man's words and compromised under his strong arms. After all, Li Nanheng was Li Nanheng. He was not Mo Jingxian. If their child dared to disturb his sleep, he would probably kick the child off the bed without mercy. Thinking about this scene, Feng Ling felt that it was necessary to place the child by the elderly's side. Otherwise, the child might be bullied by his own father. This night, Li Nanheng had indeed been gentle, but after all, he had endured for too long. One time was not enough, so he did it again. However, he couldn't casually carry her to the bathroom for fear of danger, so he kept tormenting her on the bed. It wasn't until Feng Ling was really tired and sleepy that he retreated with a look of satisfaction. Feng Ling's biological clock was still very punctual. Even though she was a little tired last night, she slept soundly and woke up at 6 in the morning. Recently, she and Li Nanheng had been staying in the penthouse suite of a star hotel in Sichuan. They were all luxurious suites with kitchens and cubicles that allowed them to cook their own meals. Occasionally, they would eat from the hotel, and occasionally, they would cook on a whim. She inexplicably loved to eat dumplings. In the past, she didn't eat much. Some time ago, she ate it at Auntie Chen's place. Later, when she went to Changbai Mountain, she ate it twice and accidentally ate dumplings with chives, eggs, and shrimp. It was so delicious that she missed the taste every few days. Thus, after going out to eat hot pot yesterday, she dragged Li Nanheng to the nearby supermarket to buy a lot of flour and ingredients. Auntie Chen did teach her, but she didn't know if the food she made would taste good, so she got up early to prepare. Li Nanheng was still sleeping when he heard the whirring sound in the kitchen. It rang for a long time. Feng Ling had just called Auntie Chen. Auntie Chen had just taught her how to chop the dumpling filling. She was chopping non-stop, preparing to make dumplings later. Although he was satisfied last night, when he saw Feng Ling sleeping in his arms in the second half of the night, he was still hard for a few hours. However, he was afraid that she wouldn't be able to take it since she was pregnant, so he repeatedly took a cold shower. He was afraid that the cold air would cool her, so after showering, he sat in the living room for a while. When his body warmed up, he went to lie down by her side. After tossing and turning for a long time, he finally fell asleep when it was almost dawn. Right now, he was really sleepy and slept for more than an hour in the kitchen. By the time Li Nanheng got up, Feng Ling had already made the noodles and was sitting at the dining table making dumplings. The room was quiet. It was raining outside today, and there was a dense layer of water and fog on the window glass. Feng Ling was wearing beige home clothes. She was as thin as Jin Wan, and even though she had been pregnant for 3 months, her belly still didn't show. It was said that many thin people didn't show their belly until they were 4 months pregnant. The woman was concentrating on pinching the dumplings with her head down. She was still a beginner when it came to making dumplings. The filling was done, but the dumpling skin was not very round at the beginning. The first dozen dumplings looked a little unsightly, but the next 20 or 30 dumplings looked more and more presentable. When she made more than 40 dumplings, she just found the right position with both hands and squeezed hard, and a perfect white and fat dumpling was formed. In the past, when Fong Ling was in the base, she especially liked guns. Now, she really liked to learn how to cook. Perhaps nothing could make people feel the gift of ordinary life more than food. She learned very quickly. Usually, as long as she liked it, she would be able to quickly accept it. For example, the dumplings were becoming more and more presentable. The ones that were made in the back were all placed neatly on the table. They were not cooked yet, but they were already enough to make one drool. Such a dexterous Fong Ling was really amazing. It wasn't that Li Nanheng hadn't eaten this before. Especially living in America, he wasn't too sensitive to the food in China. He just liked to eat some Chinese food. However, at this moment, when he saw Fong Ling casually tied her hair up with a rubber band and focused on making dumplings, he felt inexplicably full of joy. Li Nanheng stood by the bedroom door and watched the scene in the dining room. At this moment, his heart was perfectly surrounded by the quiet atmosphere in front of him. Fong Ling seemed to be very satisfied with the dumplings she made. The little dimples on the corners of her lips that didn't often appeared because of her smile. Li Nanheng stepped on the thick carpet outside and leaned over from behind. He loosely held Fong Ling's waist. "You're awake. You. Fong Ling knew it was him and didn't turn her face. However, the man suddenly leaned over and bit her lips. At the same time, he kissed her and didn't want to leave. It's about time for it to be sweet. I think it's about time to change the next pair of CP tomorrow. The Li era who has been smeared with honey is so sweet that my teeth are about to fall." Chapter 1432. Li Nanheng didn't stop until Fong Ling's lips were about to turn red. "Do you want to wrap it together?" Fong Ling asked him. Li Nanheng watched as she became more and more skilled. "How can you eat so much? Is it a lot?" Fong Ling didn't eat too much or too little. It was a very healthy amount of food. Li Nanheng's appetite was considered normal among men, and he wouldn't eat too much or too little. Right now, she had only wrapped dozens of dumplings. "I plan to wrap more. If the taste is good, I can cook it tonight. If it's not good, it's delicious," Li Nanheng concluded. "You haven't eaten yet, it looks delicious enough. If it really tastes good, it definitely won't be worse than Auntie Chen's." As Li Nanheng spoke, he lowered his head and kissed her forehead. "Don't wrap it. These are enough. If you want to eat it tonight, I'll take you out to eat. Don't work so hard." Fong Ling counted and found that she had already wrapped about 60 dumplings. She decided to round them up and began to pack up her things after exactly 60. Then she took out a portion to cook. After more than 10 minutes, the dumplings were cooked. Li Nanheng came to the kitchen first and picked one out to taste. Fong Ling quickly said, "Blow it. Quickly blow it. Don't burn it." The window happened to be open, and the wind blew in. Li Nanheng stood by the window and allowed the wind to blow the dumplings. He also blew it twice and put it in his mouth. Fong Ling stared at his expression. "How is it? Is it delicious?" Li Nanheng narrowed his eyes and then raised his eyebrows solemnly. He looked like a judge sitting on the bench of a food festival, recalling the taste seriously. Just as Fong Ling thought that he was going to keep her in suspense again, the man suddenly leaned down and kissed her lips. The tip of his tongue brushed against hers, allowing her to taste the dumplings he had made. It seemed that the taste was not bad. "Did you feel it?" The man kissed her lips again. "All right, you can eat now." It definitely tastes good. Feng Ling blushed at his way of tasting her. She pretended to turn around and cleared her throat. All right, let's get ready for breakfast. Anyway, it's getting late. Li Nanheng had kissed enough. He happily went to help take the plate and mix the dipping sauce. After being busy for a long time in the morning, he could finally eat the dumplings. He was very full. After the meal, the rain outside stopped. After noon, the weather was clear and the air was especially good. This kind of weather was suitable for Feng Ling to go out for a walk and play with the unborn child in her stomach. Li Nanheng brought Feng Ling downstairs for a walk. The two of them were wearing black trousers and black t-shirts, and a thin white sports coat. In fact, it was not considered a couple's outfit, but Feng Ling's style of dressing could not be too feminine. When she returned to the Feng family, she had no choice but to change in order to work. She was still used to dressing like this, and gradually, every time she and Li Nanheng went out, they would often wear standard black and white matching couples' outfits. In addition, Li Nanheng was extremely chauvinistic and possessive. When walking on the street, whenever a man glanced at Feng Ling, he would immediately hold her shoulders and press her into his arms, brazenly declaring ownership. It was as though a few big words were written on his face, "This is my wife." Feng Ling was used to how cold this man was to outsiders and how warm he was to her. When they were outside, she told him to try his best to restrain himself and not always hug her. After all, he was already a man over 30 years old. He was like a group of middle school students who were dating on the street, pulling and hugging each other to show off their love. However, Feng Ling did not understand the thoughts of middle school students. They held hands on the street because they were in love, but when they saw such a beautiful sister and such a handsome and mature man walking together so lovingly, they were extremely envious. They were all wondering if they could only openly hug and hold hands when they grew up without being afraid of being discovered by their parents. When Feng Ling was outside, she was always thin-skinned. Li Nanheng did not make things difficult for her. He strolled to the nearby supermarket, casually walked around, and bought some things. Then he held Feng Ling's hand and touched the platinum ring on her nameless finger that he had not taken off ever since he put it on. He lowered his head and glanced at her. Then, he held her hair up and looked at it carefully. "What are you looking at?" After the ring that the old lady wore was polished into a new one, although the size is very suitable for you, this is, after all, only a token of goodwill from the old man to his granddaughter-in-law. It can't be considered our wedding ring. The marriage proposal can be made up for after the child is born. As for the ring, I think it's better to buy it today. I don't need it. This is fine. I don't usually wear jewelry. I gave it to you. You have to wear it. I have to dote on my wife. Feng Ling, Li Nanheng brought Feng Ling to the most prosperous commercial street in Sichuan City. The few shopping malls in front were not bad. Feng Ling was led in by Li Nanheng. Seeing that this man was really persistent in treating her well, Feng Ling sometimes didn't know what was good about her. She felt that her current life was very good, but Li Nanheng seemed to be unable to give her enough. He just wanted to give her everything he could, even if it was only a small ring. The two of them went to a very famous French jewelry store to look around for a while. In the end, they chose a pair of rings. The man's ring was still plain, but it had a rich design inside. It was made by a famous designer. The woman's ring was the kind that Feng Ling liked. It was a very simple diamond ring. After the shop assistant measured their fingers and placed an order, Li Nanheng was still looking at the other jewelry on the counter, thinking about which ones he could buy for Feng Ling to wear. In the end, Feng Ling's gaze was attracted by a shop outside the shopping mall. Seeing that the size of her fingers had already been measured, she used the excuse of buying a bottle of water to go out. Li Nanheng looked at it for a long time and felt that no matter which one she wore, it would look good on her. When Feng Ling was in the base, her skin was especially white. Now that she didn't need to train in the base every day, her skin was especially white. No matter what jewelry she wore, she would look good. There was no need to choose. When he turned back and saw that she hadn't returned, Li Nanheng quickly turned to look for his wife. In the end, when he went to the place selling water outside, he didn't see anyone. He swept his gaze forward and saw the large knife shop opposite. On top of it, there were 4 exaggerated words, King of 100 Weapons. Feng Ling had been uninterested in the jewelry store earlier, but now that she was standing in the store opposite, her eyes lit up. Li Nanheng. Chapter 1433. Before Li Nanheng walked in, he went to the side to buy 2 bottles of mineral water before entering. Feng Ling was standing in the crystal counters inside, looking at the exhibits that seemed to be sealed and forbidden to touch. When she saw a knife engraved with ancient Indian patterns, she lowered her head to read the various descriptions written on the side of the knife. Feng Ling was engrossed in reading when a bottle of water was suddenly handed over. She turned back to see Li Nanheng standing by the side. He glanced at the knife lightly and asked mildly, "Do you like it?" "Yes, but this kind of knife is only worth collecting. Most of the knives here are just antique exhibits. Only the ones in the front counter can be sold. There seems to be a lot of English knives and Russian professional folding knives. I'll go and have a look later." Li Nanheng glanced at the knife and said indifferently, "It does have collection value, but this one is fake." Feng Ling was surprised. "How can it be fake? This Damascus knife is famous in the world. It is very famous in the international knife industry. Its origin is ancient India. It is made of wood steel ingots. There are casting patterns on the surface. This knife was used as a weapon in ancient India, Persia, Arabia, and other places. It is extremely sharp, and there are many rumors about it. However, with the exhaustion of the Wuxi iron mine, this knife has long been a peerless product. Although it is famous in the world, it is difficult to find a real one," Li Nanheng said lightly. "Then how can you be sure that this is fake?" "I read here that there is still one surviving in the world. Because the real one is in the Li family." Feng Ling glanced at him in disbelief. Li Nanheng raised his cold brows and gave her a meaningful expression. "In these shops in China, there are too many half-real and half-fake ones. I can't guarantee that one is real, but I can't guarantee which one is fake. After all, it is a big country of imitation." Feng Ling quickly pulled him back and asked him to lower his voice. Li Nanheng's voice was not loud. After being pulled by her, he lowered his head and leaned close to her ear. "If you like it, go back and ask grandfather for it. That is the Damascus knife he has kept for decades. If you say you like it, he will definitely give it to you without hesitation. After all, in the entire Li family, you and the little thing in your stomach are the ancestors. Since it's Grandpa's collection, I won't covet it. Let him keep it." Feng Ling lowered her head to look at the fake in the crystal cabinet in front of her. Because she knew it was fake, the more she looked at it, the more she disliked it. She did not look at the knives in the other cabinets and went to look at the knives in the front. In the end, she picked up a small and exquisite folding knife that was extremely sharp and hidden in it and played with it in her hand. "Didn't you insist on giving me a present? It will take at least a month for the ring to be custom-made. Why don't you give me a knife today?" Li Nanheng glanced at the price on the knife. Compared to a diamond ring that was worth millions, 2,000 yuan was really not worth mentioning. But she liked it very much. It was a genuine Russian folding knife. It did look like it was made of fine steel. He glanced at it and called the shop assistant to settle the bill. When the shop assistant came over, he thought it was the gentleman who wanted to buy it. It wasn't until the gentleman swiped his card that he realized it was the beautiful lady in the couple's outfit who had been holding the folding knife as if it was something she loved. Did women actually like these knives and spears? For Fong Ling, it was more than just liking. Walking out of the shop, she opened the folding knife in her hand and looked at the sky in the direction of the sun. She narrowed her eyes slightly and said softly, "When I was 5 years old, when I was taken away by the American mafia in the jungle, a man saw that I was too scared and gave me a folding knife like this in his hand. He told me that as long as I had a weapon in my hand, as long as I was strong and calm enough, I didn't have to be afraid of anything. In the years before I was sent to the orphanage, that knife had always been by my side. It supported my courage and my faith, allowing me to gradually learn to walk upright from a little wolf girl and become a human. Later, that knife was taken away by the orphanage or the police at that time. I didn't find the same one for many years, but today, I found it." Li Nanheng understood and reached out to pull her into his arms. He rubbed her head. "It doesn't matter if this knife is by your side in the future. From now on, I'm your knife." Fong Ling's lips curled up. This narcissistic man wanted to snatch the limelight from a knife. Was he trying to be her courage and her faith? There was no need to snatch it. Many years ago, he was already one. Another 3 years passed. Winter passed, spring came, and summer passed. The Li family's little grandson, Li Xinyue, had his 3rd birthday. The 2 elders of the Fong and Li families wanted to gather together, but there were too many people who wanted to come over to celebrate the child's birthday. They could only choose a larger venue. After choosing for a while, they actually chose 11 base. Li Xinyue, who had been brought to the base by his father since he could walk at the age of 1, finally managed to slip away from his 4 great-grandfathers and great-grandparents. The 3-year-old fair and clean little boy walked past the various training camps in a dignified manner. From time to time, he stopped and put his hands behind his back. He imitated Uncle Ah Feng's lecturing tone and said, "What are you all doing? Don't whisper to each other during training. Do you think this is a market?" When the newcomers who were training saw that the little young master of the Li family had strolled here, they couldn't help but run over to carry the little thing over. They fed him water and fanned him. From time to time, they asked him what he wanted to eat. They were just short of hugging Li Xinyue's thigh and calling him daddy. After all, he would be the successor of 11 base in the future. In another 10 years, he would probably point at their noses and scold them all day long. It was better to suck up to him early. Li Xinyue crossed his legs and enjoyed the juice brought by the little uncles, as well as the ice cream and snacks bought from the base's cafeteria. Just as he was enjoying himself, he suddenly heard a gunshot. It seemed to have been fired from 500 meters away. The little fellow's ears twitched, and she jumped down from the chair in an instant. She shoved the juice and all the food in her hands back into their arms, throwing the blame to them very quickly. Then, she ran out quickly, saying as she ran, "My mommy is here. Don't tell her that I've been here." "Yes, little ancestor." The newbies at the base watched as the 3-year-old little radish ran a few hundred meters away and accurately found his mommy, who was guiding the newbies in shooting. He ran over and hugged her thigh. "Mommy. When can I hold a gun?" Fong Ling held the gun in one hand. Afraid that it would accidentally fire and hurt him, she quickly pushed the clingy little fellow away. However, the little thing hugged her leg and refused to let go. When Li Nanheng heard the sound and walked over, the moment he heard his father's footsteps, Li Xinyue instantly became terrified. He bent his back and was about to slip away. "Li Xinyue, did you go to the newbie team to ask them to buy snacks for you just now? Get back here. Brat, stop right there. Ah! Uncle Fat Tai, save me." Uncle Han, save me. Uncle Sue, save me. Uncle Fong, save me. Uncle K, save me. End of Ling Li's story. Chin Sighting / Sher Nianj, you are my little love song. See you in the next love song. Chapter 1434. Dr. Chin, the patient in bed 6 with a fracture in his calf, secretly tried to get out of bed and walk around while his family went out to get water. Right now, he has been complaining that his leg hurts. The tall and straight figure was dressed in a long white doctor's gown. When he walked, his gaze was cold. When he pushed open the door of the ward, he saw the young man lying on the bed holding his leg in pain, moaning in pain. Dr. Chin, you're here. Quickly take a look. This child is just disobedient. I already told him not to get out of bed and walk around, but he insisted that he was young and not afraid. He even said that it had been so long since the operation, so he could get out of bed and jump a few times. In the end, he only came down and walked for a few minutes. When the patient's family saw that the attending doctor had arrived, he quickly stood up and walked over. Will he be fine? Will it affect his recovery after the operation? The man did not speak. He only walked to the bed and looked down at the boy in his early 20s. This boy was a university student. He was too fierce when passing the ball in the school's basketball club competition. He was accidentally kicked down by the opponent and twisted to the ground, causing a fracture in his ankle and calf. It had been almost a month since the operation. However, because the boy still had other illnesses and some people in his family had a say in the hospital, the Department of Internal Medicine and the Department of Orthopedics would occasionally come over to take a look. I'm a physician, Chin Sighting said indifferently. He casually picked up the list in the blue folder on the bed and glanced at it. He then turned to the nurse behind him and said, "Call Dr. Zhang from the Department of Orthopedics over." As soon as the little nurse saw Dr. Chin's face, she knew that he must be very tired after the operation half an hour ago. He rarely talked to people when he was not working in the hospital. At this moment, his face looked even colder. The little nurse did not dare to ask more. She responded and quickly walked out of the ward. Dr. Chin, you've just finished an operation. You must be very tired. I know it's because the child is not sensible that you have to take the trouble to come and see him during your rest time, but I'm really worried about his leg. The patient's family stood by the side and saw the surprisingly good-looking male doctor's face. He spoke with some apprehension. Chin Sighting glanced at the patient's family member coldly and said in a clear and cold voice, "The chief surgeon and the nurses should have reminded him more than once about the surgical procedures. The current situation will not affect the healing of his leg bones, but whether the rehabilitation will be smooth or not depends on his own physique and calcium absorption. No doctor can guarantee that he will be able to stand up and return to the basketball court in a few months, but if he still does not take the doctor's advice seriously, I can guarantee that he will definitely not be able to return to the basketball court in a few months." The patient's family was shocked. Chin Sighting did not even look at the young man on the bed whose eyes were red from anxiety. When he heard the footsteps of an orthopedic doctor approaching, he walked out expressionlessly. The door of the ward opened. Dr. Zhang from the orthopedics department greeted Chin Sighting when he saw him. "Sighting, why do you look so pale these 2 days? Have the higher-ups arranged too many surgeries for you? Have you not rested for a long time? You've been on duty recently, and there are a few very important thoracotomy surgeries that are linked together, right? It's fine. The one inside, you better treat him well. He's so young and overestimates himself. Don't really cripple his leg just like that." Chin Sighting did not turn back. He only raised his hand slightly as a form of greeting and goodbye. He walked straight in the direction of his own consultation room. "TSK, you're only 5 or 6 years older than the one inside. You speak as if you're older." Dr. Zhang smiled and pushed the door open to enter. Enchanting took the medical record of a new patient from the nurse behind him. As he looked at it, he said, "Bring bed 3 to do the blood and urine tests again. Bed 17 can stop the needles. He'll be discharged tomorrow morning. When he goes back, ask his family members to keep an eye on him. Don't go out and get exposed to the wind. Stay at home for observation." Bed 22. High City Central Hospital was the largest provincial tertiary grade A hospital in High City and even in the nearby provinces and cities. Such a hospital did not have any free time every day. All the medical staff were busy, and it was rare for them to rest. They basically returned to the consultation room or the duty room to quickly catch up on 2 hours of sleep. Enchanting had performed 2 thoracotomy surgeries from 12:00 last night until this morning. There would be another one in the afternoon. He urgently needed to go back and sleep for an hour. Otherwise, he would not be able to perform the surgery in the afternoon. The nurse's station was the only place in the entire hospital where all kinds of gossip and anecdotes often spread. When he returned to the consultation room and passed by the nurse's station, 2 intern nurses held 2 bags of saline as they pushed the trolley forward. As they walked, they said, "Really? The chairman of Sheeta Group suddenly passed away just like that. Sheeta used to be quite famous in High City. I used to buy their company's branded bags. The quality has always been very good. Isn't their chairman only in his 50s? Why did he die just like that? I heard that he died of illness in America." Say, that Sheeta Group has always been doing well in High City. Why did he suddenly move his entire family out of High City overnight 4 years ago? Even the company's headquarters were moved to America. Could there be something fishy about this? Even if there's really something, it's not something that ordinary people like us can know. We can only listen to those rich people in gossip news. Who said that? Our hospital's Dr. Chen is the young master of one of the 4 big families in High City. As they spoke, they suddenly felt a gaze that was as cold as an icehouse. The 2 nurses turned around and met young Master Chen's gaze. They were so frightened that they quickly stood up straight. Then, they helplessly pushed the rollers and ran away. 9:00 in the evening. High City, Lishui Villa. The white Porsche stopped in front of the villa and the man got out of the car. When he came back, he was no longer wearing the hospital's white coat. He was wearing a simple casual suit. The automatic sensor lights in the villa's courtyard illuminated his body with a faint layer of gold. Enchanting walked into the villa. After a tiring day, it was rare for him to come back and rest for a night. He habitually opened a bottle of wine and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He looked in the direction of the villa opposite and was about to drink. Suddenly, his phone rang. For a sudden call at this time, it must be from the hospital. Enchanting put down his wine glass and picked it up. Dr. Chen, the patient in bed 17, suddenly coughed up blood. He said he couldn't breathe. "Come and take a look, got it." Enchanting hung up the phone and turned to walk out, leaving a glass of wine on the table by the window. The white Porsche drove out of Lishui Villa district like an arrow leaving the bow. After the car disappeared, a dim yellow light lit up in the window of the villa that had not been lived in for 4 years. Chapter 1435. 9 years ago. It was autumn in High City. The air was dry, mixed with the smell of fallen leaves. The 17-year-old Nianj squatted by the flower bed in High City First High School in a daze. When she called Tang Xiao a few hours ago, he was rushing to the infirmary with their class bell. It was said that the prettiest girl in the class ran 1,500 meters at the school's sports meet during her period. After that, she fell ill and became a Lin Dayu. Tang Xiao was taking care of someone in the infirmary. He couldn't even be bothered to say a few perfunctory words to his girlfriend. He just casually nodded and continued to ask about the prettiest girl in the class, who was crying on the bed. Shi Nianj hung up the phone. After a few seconds of silence, she sent a text message to announce their breakup. The other party patiently accompanied the class bell for 2 hours before seeing the news. After that, he frantically called her. She did not pick up and was no longer interested in contacting this person. He could not even be considered a first love, so he could not be considered a broken up. A few months ago, Tang Xiao had confessed to her. After that, the two of them had been in a relationship for more than 2 months. Although he was in year 3 class 2 and she was in year 2 class 2, they were 1 year apart and 1 year apart. However, Tang Xiao's family seemed to have business dealings with their family's company. Their parents and elders had met a few times and could be considered half an acquaintance. Shi Nianj, who was in her adolescence and felt that she should date, agreed under his pursuit. Tang Xiao's personality was very flamboyant and active. He liked to play basketball and had many fans on the basketball court. However, Shi Nianj did not really like him, but after all, she had agreed on a moment of impulse. She held on to the principle of being responsible for him, so she maintained an open relationship. She did not hide it from her classmates and friends. The two of them had only held hands a few times in private. It was as though they had never even kissed each other on the cheek. They could not be any more innocent. This kind of central air-conditioned type of person who radiated heat everywhere was not suitable for her. If it was not suitable, then end it. There was no need to waste time. Tang Xiao was also considered an influential figure in Sea City First High School. It was said that there were many influential figures in their 3rd year of high school. However, she had been influenced by her grandfather since she was young and liked to study medicine. She never paid attention to school matters. Other than going to class, she would go to her grandfather's place to kill time, so she did not know many people. When she was 10 years old, she had developed a new type of medicine with her grandfather, who was a medical professor. She had even won some medical achievement award. Some time ago, her grandfather had developed an anti-cancer drug in the laboratory. Shi Nianj had also participated. Although she was only a helper at most, she was still a participant. In this day and age, everything needed gimmicks. It was said that in order to commend her and curry favor with the Shi family, the school planned to let her skip grades in a few days and jump from a 2nd-year student to a 3rd-year student. She could clearly indulge for another year, but she was asked to prepare for the college entrance examination. The elders of the Shi family actually agreed. Shi Nianj was so angry that there was nothing she could do. In autumn, school had just started. She was about to skip grades and change classes, and she was suddenly faced with the major change of losing her love. Shi Nianj felt that she had to cry or be haggard for a few days to match her current state. Otherwise, she would be too heartless. Therefore, she squatted by the flower bed for a long time, unable to squeeze out a single tear. In the end, she could only put on a bitter face, planning to maintain this expression to complain to a few of her close friends. Otherwise, if her expression was too joyful, they would definitely laugh at her for being careless. She stood up abruptly, but she forgot that she had been squatting here for at least an hour. She stood up too quickly and her vision suddenly turned black. She staggered and spilled half a cup of milk tea in her hand. At the same time, she bumped into a person who had walked over from some unknown path. In front of her was a dazzling white shirt. Her cup of milk tea had spilled all over his white shirt. She looked at it in astonishment, then raised her head to look at the owner of the white shirt, then lowered her head to look at it, and then raised her head to look at him. The pearls in the cup of milk tea hung on his body and slowly dripped down. She did not dare to look at his expression, but she still quickly took 2 steps back from his embrace. She braced herself and apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Your clothes were dirtied by me. I'll compensate you with one, okay? How much is it? As she spoke, she was about to look for money in her school uniform pocket. The man in the white shirt only looked at her expressionlessly. It was obvious that he despised the dirty things on his body. When he saw that she was about to take out the money without saying anything, he frowned without batting an eyelid. He did not say a word and walked past with a cold expression. Your clothes look very expensive. After all, I dirted them. I don't have any other intentions. I'll compensate you. Nianch's observation skills were also very strong. She turned back and quickly chased after him. Move aside. The white shirt was suddenly blocked by her. When he spoke, his voice was cold and indifferent. It was clear that he did not have much patience. Although he disliked her, he did not intend to argue with her about such a shirt. Nianch was shocked by his cold and distant expression. She stared at his face for a while and blushed for some reason. Damn it, this was definitely the first time in her 17 years of life. She was the daughter of Shida Group. Ever since she was young, she had seen all kinds of rich people and all kinds of good-looking boys. However, this was the first time she had seen such a good-looking one. This person. And let's call him White Shirt for now. His face was handsome, his hair was short, and his skin was very white and clean. His entire body seemed to be written with the words "Don't get close to strangers." His aura was cold, and he had the reticence of a young man. His face was good-looking, his figure was tall, and his fingers were also very good-looking. She could still smell the faint fragrance she had smelled when she accidentally bumped into his arms. It smelled like detergent. It smelled very good. For the first time, the 17-year-old girl experienced the feeling of her heart thumping wildly. In the past, she had never liked anyone, nor had she done anything on purpose. However, at this moment, her consciousness was filled with the desire to get to know him. In the end, the only thing he said was, "Get out of my way." After that, he didn't say anything else. When she stubbornly tried to stop him again and stupidly took out $100 bills and stuffed them into his hand, he looked at her as if she was a lunatic, flung his hand away, and walked around her. Nianch looked at his back view and thought to herself, "Oh my god, even his back view is so good-looking." She then lowered her head to look at the money in her hand, wondering if she had given him too little money. Otherwise, if she had the chance to see him again, she would find a shirt shop to swipe her card. At least she had to compensate him. But he was really so handsome. Her heart was beating so fast. At that time, Nianch was still a straightforward girl. A 17-year-old girl was wholeheartedly chasing after her male god Qin. At that time, Dr. Qin had yet to experience the smoothness of growing up. In other words, at that time, Knife Qin was not Knife Qin. He was Qin Gao Ling, a proper flower on a high mountain. It was very difficult to chase after him. Chapter 1436. 3 days later, Monday. Year 3 Class 6, Dean he sent Nianch in. At that time, it happened to be the form teacher's class. Teacher Zhao, stop for a moment. Let me tell everyone that this is a new student in our Class 6. It's Nianch, who won 2 medical achievement awards at the age of 17. She just skipped a grade from year 2. Let her introduce herself and then continue with the class. The headmaster then patted Nianch's shoulder and gave her an encouraging look. He then called the form teacher to the corridor and said a few words. Nianj stood in this new class of the new school year. No matter how she usually behaved, in front of so many unfamiliar classmates, she still felt a little uncomfortable. To say that she was shy, it seemed a little pretentious. To say that she was excited, she was about to rush for the college entrance examination. She didn't even have time to cry about her bad luck. What was there to be excited about? The form teacher, Teacher Zhao, said at the door, "Introduce yourself and choose a seat." Nianj simply said her name and secretly looked around. She found that most of the seats in the class were full. There was only a quiet girl sitting in the second row in front. The seat beside her was empty. There were 2 more seats at the back. She swept her gaze behind her, and her eyes lit up. White shirt. Wasn't that the white shirt she had been worried about for days? He was actually a senior in year 3. No, she was in the same class as him now. The seat next to him was empty. Usually, there were only 2 reasons for sitting in the back row. Either they were students who were too bad at school and refused to be disciplined, or they were very tall. They didn't want to block the students' line of sight behind them, so they sat in the back row. When she bumped into him that day, she realized that he was definitely more than 1.8 meters tall. Year 3 boys actually had a chance to grow taller. Right now, he was more than 1.8 meters tall. In the future, he would definitely be taller. As for why the seat next to such a handsome person was empty, she was not in the mood to think about it. Without even considering it, she walked over and sat beside White Shirt. Nianj's face was expressionless, but her heart was a little excited. When she put down her school bag, her hands trembled slightly. However, the deskmate she had just chosen gave her a very cold and unapproachable look at this moment. Nianj mistakenly thought that his deskmate had only applied for leave today. She subconsciously asked softly, "Is there anyone sitting here?" The boy sitting in front of her turned around and mouthed, "No one's here." At the same time, he gestured to her not to sit there. She had lived for 17 years, but this was the first time she had ever thought about a boy. Since there was no one else, how could she not sit? Deskmate, this was a deskmate. She wasn't leaving. Nianj smiled at the boy in front of her and sat firmly in her seat. She then turned to look at the white shirt beside her. Today, he was wearing his school uniform jacket. Even the white school uniform gave off the smell of a white shirt. So handsome, so handsome. How could there be such a good-looking man? So handsome, so handsome. The man in the white shirt looked at her again because of her strange and passionate gaze, then turned his head to the side and did not say a word from beginning to end. Teacher Zhao entered the classroom and his gaze first landed on the second row. He was surprised that Nianj was not sitting in front. When he saw that she was sitting in Qin's siding seat, he subconsciously quickly glanced at the Qin family's crown prince. He saw that the crown prince's brows were filled with dissatisfaction, but he did not show anything. He thought for a moment and said, "All right, sit there first. I'll adjust it later." Nianj nodded, thinking to herself that she wouldn't adjust it. She took out all kinds of new textbooks from her bag one by one. She was actually not a top student. She only relied on the medical achievements that her grandfather had brought her to do. Suddenly, she was in the 3rd year of high school. She definitely couldn't keep up. She didn't really understand what the first class was about. After class, she was called to the office by the form teacher. She told her about the situation in the class and showed her the report cards of the class and the school year. She pointed at the names of the students who were ranked 5th, 7th, and 10th in the school year. "I know you might not be able to keep up at the beginning. These students are all from our class. You have a lively personality and should be able to play with your classmates very soon. Usually, find them to study more and ask them to help you. Then, take some time to read all the textbooks in the second year. That way, you'll be able to keep up very quickly. Shirnianj looked at the report card and realized that the name of the top student in the school year, Enchanting, was also written in grade 3 class 6. She pointed at the name and said, "This is also in our class, right? He's the top student in the school year." "Teacher, why didn't you call his name earlier?" "Teacher Zhao. Forget about this." "Ah." Shirnianj did not understand. Seeing that she did not understand the situation in the third year at all, Teacher Zhao sighed and said with a smile, "Student Qin is your deskmate now." The male god was a top student? Shirnianj very shallowly fell an inch deeper. Earlier on, during class, she had secretly glanced at the person beside her. At that time, he did not look at her at all. She could not see his eyes, but just half of his face was enough to make him look good. After class, she took the opportunity to look at his eyes again. At that time, she almost froze. He was really so good-looking. When he was in class, the coldness on his body would be slightly restrained. The slightly serious and calm expression on his face was even more captivating. "Speaking of Student Qin, I suggest you change your seat. In the past 3 years, the seat beside him has been empty. Student Qin usually likes to be quiet and is used to being alone. You shouldn't be able to experience the joy of a third year sitting next to him. Why don't you change to another seat? What fun can there be in the third year, Teacher Zhao? At the very least, you have to get to know the other new students. You probably won't feel the love of classmates from Student Qin." "No need, I'm not changing." "Why not?" "It might not be appropriate for a lively person like you to sit next to him." It's fine. Even if he's an iceberg, I can tolerate it. It's not like there aren't any other seats." "Why should I tolerate it?" "Because he's handsome." Teacher Zhao pushed his glasses and smiled helplessly. Shirnianj was determined to sit with Qin siding. After persuading her for a while, Teacher Zhao was almost amused by her. Children nowadays were really difficult to manage, especially Shirnianj, a child who had grown up in the Shi family's love. She was even more straightforward and did not know how to restrain her emotions. With her temper, if she stayed by the young master's side for a week, she would probably cry and ask to change seats. After all, she was the little ancestor of the Shi family. She could not say much and could only wait until she hurt herself. Chapter 1437. However, it was not up to the teacher to decide whether Shirnianj could sit in that seat for a long time. Although the Qin family's young master had good academic results and was outstanding in all aspects, it was also true that he was cold and did not like to interact with others. Their high school was ranked first in all aspects in the country, so in a place like High City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, the children of various large families would also attend school here. They had seen many famous and wealthy families, so they were no longer surprised. However, the Qin family, one of the 4 big families in High City, naturally could not be treated the same as the other famous families. After all, rich people were not all on the same level. Qin Siding's IQ was very high. In fact, other than his low-key and cold personality, there was no other problem. Seeing that his grades were always first, he did not like anyone disturbing him, so the school acquiesced. Thus, in the past 3 years, they did not force him to have a deskmate. Today, Shirnianj's courage was commendable. She did not even know that Qin Siding was in the 3rd year of high school. She rushed to his side and sat down. When Shirnianj returned to the classroom, the next class had already begun. It was a history class. Year 3 Class 6 was a science class, so the history class was naturally very relaxed. It was equivalent to a self-study class. She politely greeted the teacher and returned to her seat. Her male god, who was a straight-A student, was writing a physics paper with his head lowered. A few minutes later, he picked up a bottle of mineral water and took a sip. Seeing his movements when he drank the water and seeing his Adam's apple roll slightly when he swallowed, Cherniange could not help but swallow as well. From her angle, she could only see the side of his face. This student Chin really did not like to talk to others. He refused to tilt his face in her direction and had always been doing his own things. He did not feel anything when such a big person appeared beside him. However, this was also good. At the very least, he would not chase her away from this seat. The form teacher said that his personality was too cold and he did not like to interact with others. Cherniange thought to herself that this had nothing to do with her. She would not provoke him and would just sit by the side and look at him a few more times every day. A pleasing boy, so handsome, she could endure it no matter what. Being a transfer student was actually a very torturous process. Furthermore, Cherniange was 1 year younger than the students in this class. After class, the other women would go out to the toilet together. The boys would hook their arms around each other's shoulders and chat about games, playing basketball, and where to go after school. Cherniange did not have nothing to do. The only thing she could do was sit in her seat and admire her idol's face. From the beginning to the end, Chin Siding did not look at her. After class, he got up and went out for a while. She did not know if he went to the toilet or the teacher's office for something. In short, when he returned, his expression was calm and nothing could be seen. It was likely that he did not take the initiative to ask the teacher to change her seat. After he sat down again, Cherniange's gaze quietly shifted from the fountain pen on his table to his face. When he wasn't around just now, she had been looking at his pen. It was a pure black fountain pen. When he was using this pen to write the physics paper, his handwriting was very beautiful. She had been peeking her head out to look at it, but now that he was back, she definitely had to look at him. Before class started, she leaned closer to him and said in a low voice, "The shirt you wore last time can't be cleaned at all, right? You really don't need me to compensate." Chin Siding did not even look at her. He did not say a word. Coincidentally, at this moment, the bell rang. Cherniange quickly tidied up the books on her desk and took them out. At this moment, a cold breeze blew in from the window beside her. It was not cold. After all, it was just autumn. However, the paper on her desk that she had yet to pick up suddenly flew up and flew past Chin Siding. It then landed by his feet, which was the aisle beside his desk. It was already time for class, so she could not stand up to pick it up. She knew that he was unwilling to pay attention to her, but she had to hand in that paper during self-study in the afternoon. If someone stepped on it or lost it, it would be over. She braced herself and poked his arm with her finger. "That, my paper, can you help me pick it up?" However, Chin Siding did not move as though he did not hear her. Cherniange could only gently tug at his sleeve. "Do me a favor. My paper is over there. If someone steps on it later, I won't be able to write." He was still unmoved. He did not even impatiently retract his arm from the table. Cherniange had no choice. She looked at him for a while and saw that he really couldn't be bothered to look at her. The teacher was already teaching, so she couldn't make too much of a commotion. She could only turn back and show a big smile to the male student at the table behind Chin Siding. She whispered, "Student, can you help me pick up the papers? Sorry to trouble you." The boy at the back table was a tall and strong fatty. However, even if he was so fat that he could barely squeeze into a seat, he definitely did not dare to push the table forward and squeeze into Chin Siding. This little fatty usually sat at the back, and very few girls would talk to him. Suddenly, when the beautiful new girl smiled and begged him, the little fatty instantly blushed. He quickly bent down to help her pick up the papers in front of her and handed them to her. "Thank you." Sure enough, other than the iceberg product beside her, the other students still had some love. But who asked Enchanting to be handsome? It was enough that he was handsome. If he was not easy to get along with, then so be it. It was not bad to be a pleasing statue and accompany her in class every day. "No, you're welcome." The little fatty stuttered and said with a red face, "My name is Hao Xiuxia." As Enchanting took the papers, her eyes lit up as she glanced at Hao Xiuxia. So shy. The little fatty's desk mate was a shy girl who did not like to talk. She suddenly burst out laughing and whispered, "You actually guessed his nickname so quickly." The little fatty lowered his eyes shyly. Although he was fat, his facial features were actually very good-looking. If he lost weight and worked out, he might become a handsome man in the future. "My name is Enchanting. Please take care of me in the future." As Enchanting spoke, she took out 2 bottles of yogurt from her bag and gave 1 bottle to Hao Xiuxia and his desk mate, Zhao Xiaoqing. Before the teacher noticed their small movements, she quickly turned around and placed the papers back into the desk. Although Enchanting ignored her and did not help her pick up the papers, she heard that the fatty behind her could not help but secretly open the yogurt and drink it. She really did not have a good memory. She secretly scolded herself for being shallow, but she could not resist compromising because of his looks. She took out another bottle and secretly glanced at the man beside her. She handed the yogurt over under the desk and gently touched his arm. "Do you want to drink it?" Question, how is Qin Langlang going to chase? Chapter 1438. As soon as she asked, Enchanting felt that she had been a little too enthusiastic. However, on second thought, firstly, he was good-looking. Secondly, she had dirtied his shirt before, so it was understandable for her to be nice to him. Thus, when the other party did not respond, she carefully touched him with the yogurt bottle. Ever since she sat here, Enchanting, who could not be bothered to look at her or pay any attention to her, suddenly turned his face. Enchanting could finally see his face clearly again. The 18-year-old boy had picturesque features, a sharp face, and a high nose bridge. However, he did not look very sharp and handsome, nor did he have exaggerated thick eyebrows and big eyes. In short, he was the kind that made one's heart flutter. He was so clean and refreshing that it made one feel as though this boy had to bathe hundreds of times every day. She felt that his entire body, even a single eyelash, was as beautiful as a fairy. His cold eyes seemed to be engraved with the distance between him and others. His expression seemed to be a little impatient. Enchanting raised the yogurt bottle at him and secretly told him with her eyes that he could drink it after class. However, he expressionlessly and coldly warned her. He then retracted his gaze and did not take the yogurt. Of course, he ignored her. Enchanting sighed. As expected, a male god was completely different from Tang Xiao's central air conditioner. He was so good-looking, but his temper was so bad. If only Enchanting was more easygoing and could whisper to her and pass each other a note. How good would that be? Just as she was pondering, Zhao Xiaoqing, who was sitting behind her, gently poked her back with a pen. She turned back and saw that Zhao Xiaoqing had handed her a note. Enchanting took it and quietly opened it to take a look. On it was written, "You've just been promoted. If you don't know anyone, I can be your friend. Don't always provoke Almighty Qin. It's useless. He usually doesn't care about people. Give up." There was also a cute emoticon on the back of the note where the name was written, "Oh, intersection underscore intersection, oh almighty Chin. Did all the third-year students call him that? Wow. Sure, Nianj also replied to the note. There were two beautiful and cute words and symbols written on it, okay. Oh, intersection underscore intersection, oh this was good. Of course, it was to get to know Zhao Xiaoqing and become friends. As for Qin Siding, he was simply too handsome. She couldn't bear to give him up. Even if it was just to be a desk mate that she could talk to normally, or an ordinary friend that she could talk to. It wasn't easy for her to wait until the class was over. The teacher left her homework and asked her to do the questions she had explained in class today using the new formulas. It seemed like she had to write down some ideas to solve the questions. Sure, Nianj was relatively good at the liberal arts, but the science subjects were more difficult to begin with. Now that she had suddenly skipped a grade and was promoted, it was even more impossible for her to understand immediately. Taking advantage of the break, she slowly pushed the book in front of her deskmate, who was trying to solve a problem. She leaned over and whispered that, "I don't really understand this problem. After all, I'm only in the second year of high school. Can you help me list out the formula to solve the problem? Sorry to trouble you." Qin Siding glanced at her empty book and did not even look at her. He wrote 23 next to her question. After that, he put away his pen and continued to write, ignoring her. Sure, Nianj retracted the book with a dumbfounded expression. She looked at the two handwritten numbers that were simple but beautiful. What did 23 mean? Even if she didn't understand, she knew that the teacher was asking for a formula and a solution, not to calculate a number like a primary school student. Furthermore, even if it was a number, the answer couldn't be 23. However, he was still a male god and a top student. He didn't pay much attention to her, so there must be a reason why he suddenly wrote these two numbers. Sure, Nianj was too embarrassed to continue asking him. She was about to ask Zhao Xiaoqing or Hao Xiuxia when an idea suddenly flashed in her mind. She flipped through a few pages and finally stopped at page 23. This page should be the revision questions from last semester. Sure, Nianj had never learned them, but looking at the formulas listed below, she could understand them. There were several formulas that were similar to the previous question. Did Qin Siding mean for her to find a solution to these similar questions? Ah, as expected of a male god. He taught people how to solve problems so quickly and effectively. He didn't need to waste words. Sure, Nianj flipped the book back to the previous page. Looking at the two numbers on it, all sorts of pink bubbles kept popping up in her mind. It wasn't that he ignored her. At the very least, he would write numbers for her. He wasn't pretending to be cold like other boys. He was just too lazy to talk nonsense with unrelated people. For the first time in her life, she felt that the words 2 and 3 were so beautiful. The creator of the Arabic numerals was really amazing. When Sure, Nianj spoke to Qin Siding again, it was already 3 days after they became desk mates. In the past 3 days, Sure, Nianj had completely gotten used to Qin Siding's coldness and unwillingness to provoke him. Clearly, the students in this class didn't dare to provoke him easily. They didn't even dare to touch his desk. Sure, Nianj felt that this was very good. At the very least, sitting in the area beside him, there weren't so many messy boys and girls coming to disturb her. Occasionally, Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Xiaoqing would talk to her. This peace and quiet was also very good. In the end, when Qin Siding suddenly spoke to her, Sure, Nianj did not react for a long time. Qin Siding repeated himself before Sure, Nianj looked at him in shock. "You were talking to me just now. I said, stand up." The boy's clear and pleasant voice hid a hint of coldness and impatience, but he still repeated himself. Okay. It was time for class to end. Nianj quickly stood up. Then, she saw him place a black shoulder bag on her seat. This bag looked like it should be his. Nianj looked at him. Even without him saying anything, she could understand what he meant. Usually, no one sat in this seat, so his things were casually placed on the two seats. Right now, he was silently chasing her away. It had been 3 days. It was time for her to change seats. Nianj glanced at the empty seat next to the girl who was good at studying in front of her and did not say anything. Even though she felt that Qin Siding was really cold, arrogant, and impolite, the number 23 kept echoing in her mind. She then smiled and sat back down, as though the black bag was her own. She did not mind it being placed here. At the same time, she said, "Is there no more space? Then let's put it here first. Anyway, I usually only sit on half of the chair. I can still put another bag. If you have more, put it here." After all, this was the first time Qin Siding had taken the initiative to speak to her. Although his attitude was mainly to chase her away, her little heart secretly jumped. And his voice was really nice. Even his expressionless and angry expression was nice. Chapter 1439. Zhao Xiaoqing could be considered Nianj's first friend after she was promoted to the 3rd year of high school. Her hair was long and she was very beautiful. However, her personality was sometimes very shy. She wore a pair of transparent glasses and would blush as she spoke. Her personality was very soft and easygoing. "Then did you often help Grandpa in his lab when you were very young?" Zhao Xiaoqing felt that Nianj was only 17 years old, yet she had won 2 medical achievement awards. She was simply a legend. My grandfather's personality is very good. Although he's in the medical field, he's actually an old urchin. I like to stick to him since I was young. I was also very curious about his experimental drugs. I knew that if those drugs were developed, they could save many people's lives. At first, I was just curious, but later, my grandfather brought me along. Nianj did not hide anything and openly told him about her childhood. "Wow, then you'll definitely study medicine in the future." "I have this plan. I want to enter a medical university, but I don't know if my parents will agree. After all, my family is in business, and I can't follow my grandfather for the rest of my life. However, studying medicine is my goal." As the two of them were talking, Qin Siding returned. She didn't know if he had heard the conversation between the two girls, but Nianj subconsciously retracted her leg that had just reached under his desk. Her entire back was pressed against the wall by the window. Seeing that almighty Qin had returned and that class was about to start, Zhao Xiaoqing did not dare to speak anymore. She only stuck out her tongue at Nianj and quickly lowered her head to tidy up the books for the next class. The next class was biology. It was more or less related to medicine. It was one of the classes that Nianj liked and could easily understand. She took out the book and turned to see that Qin Siding did not move. She recalled that his books were usually placed in school. He mainly studied science. These classes like biology were not too important. His books should not be here. She pushed her book toward him and placed it in the middle of their desks. She whispered, "Let's read together." She took this opportunity to turn to look at him. When Qin Siding was silent, his entire body gave off an unapproachable feeling of coldness and pressure. However, Nianj did not feel any pressure. At most, she felt cold. He did not speak and only glanced at her book. He was clearly only looking at her book, but Nianj felt as though he was looking at her. Her heart thumped twice. How beautiful! She couldn't hold back the excitement in her heart. "In the future, if you don't have a book with you in biology class, we can read together." Enchanting looked at the book in the middle and did not say a word. Actually, Nianj was not very thick-skinned. She just felt that his personality was cold, but he did not hate her or despise her. There were all kinds of people in this world. There was no need for everyone to learn to cater to others with a smile. Besides, as the crown prince of one of the 4 big families in High City, he really did not need to cater to anyone. The next class was physics. Teacher Zhang especially liked to give out papers. Every time he gave her a question, it would be especially difficult. After half a class, he would write down a paper and then hand out the results. Nianj's score was shockingly 91. She had just crammed for a few days of lessons that she had never learned in her 3rd year of high school. It was really not easy to pass. As she was very satisfied with her current results, she glanced to the side. She saw that there was a huge 120 on Enchanting's paper. The full score on this kind of test paper in class was 120. He was indeed a top student. He could easily finish an entire physics paper in 20 minutes and get full marks. Nianj lowered her head to look at her 91 and quickly covered the number with her textbook. Big boss, I can't compare to him. I'd better cover my embarrassment myself. The last class of the weekend. The week after the start of the 3rd year of high school was especially hard. After school, Nianj had just walked out of the school when she saw the commercial car parked outside. She took off the headphones she had just put on to listen to music and walked over. She saw that the window had rolled down. The person who had come to pick her up was the Shi family's driver, Uncle Qin. Miss, Sir and Madam have recently gone abroad to discuss business. There's no one at home. Are you going back to the Shi family to eat or to your grandfather's? Grandfather hasn't been in his own laboratory recently. Hasn't he been holding a seminar with many experts? I won't fill in the blanks at a time like this. I'll go home. Uncle Qin was about to get out of the car to open the door for her, but she had already opened the door and got into the car. After sitting down, she put on her headphones and said, "My parents are usually so busy. Usually, only the auntie who cooks is at home. I don't think I should take such a long drive back on weekends. I can find a house near the school to stay." "How can that be?" "Miss, how old are you? You're already living outside alone. It's not safe." "What's not safe about it?" "You can ask Auntie Xiang to come here every weekend to cook for me. Actually, I can eat takeout, but my parents are worried and always ask you to do it. I'm already 17, not 7. If I live near the school, I can save a lot of trouble." Uncle Qin did not speak for a while, as though he was listening to the phone. 2 minutes later, he said, "Miss, I've been talking to Mr. Shi on the phone with my headphones on. Mr. Shi said that he can respect your wishes. You can take advantage of this weekend to find a neighborhood with better security facilities near the school. The family can book a house for you at any time for you to stay there first." "Okay." Nianj smiled and did not say anything else. She directly amplified the music in her headphones. Since she was young, she had been considered a family pet. Everyone in the family loved her very much, but her grandmother and grandparents had left early. Only her grandfather doted on her the most, and her parents treated her well. However, because Shida Group's business was getting bigger and busier, the two of them were worried about leaving many of the company's decisions to outsiders. Therefore, they were busy every day. The only thing they could give her was concern over the phone and unlimited money. Uncle Qin and Auntie Xiang usually took care of her the most. She had been used to this kind of life since she was young and understood how busy her parents were. When she was young, she followed her grandfather. When she grew up, she was busy with her studies and became more independent. The villa where the Shi family was located was still too far from the school. It would indeed be best if she could live near the school. Nianj returned to the Sher family's home that night. After finishing a few papers and homework, she called her parents on the other side of the ocean for half an hour. In fact, they asked her if she was not used to being promoted to the third year of high school. She said that everything was fine and only reported the good news. She suddenly jumped a grade, so it would definitely be more difficult for her studies. However, this would be overcome with time. There was nothing much to say. She only said that the teachers and classmates were very good. She also said that her desk mate was a top student and was very warm-hearted. He would guide her in her studies. Her parents were very happy to hear this. Only then did they hang up the phone and continue working. Chapter 1440. When she returned to school on Monday, Uncle Chin had already helped her choose a few houses nearby. He handed her the map and location of the houses for her to choose. That afternoon, she had already chosen and sent a message to Uncle Chin, telling him about the house she had chosen. Uncle Chin said that they would immediately arrange for someone to clean up the existing renovations in the house. As this house had been newly renovated and had been resold not long ago, there was no need to renovate it. Uncle Chin said that he needed to test for formaldehyde and disinfect it. In another 4 to 5 days, which was the weekend, she could move in. It was rare that she did not pay much attention to Chin's sighting. After settling the matter in the afternoon, she turned to look at her desk mate and noticed that he did not seem to be in good spirits today. He would take the opportunity to sleep on the table. Furthermore, he was usually cold enough. Today, it seemed like there was some hostility between his brows. He seemed to be in a bad mood, and the word easily angered seemed to be clearly written on his handsome and cold face. Perhaps because he didn't sleep well last night, his eyes looked more hazy than usual. When he occasionally lowered his head to look at a book, looking at his white eyelids, one could tell how bad his sleep was last night. There were 3 hours of self-study time in the evening. Nianj went to buy a cup of hot milk before the self-study class. As soon as she returned, she saw that Chin's sighting was preparing to take advantage of the self-study class to rest for a while. She quickly went forward and placed the milk on the desk in front of him. A good-looking man could be seen through even the slightest movement between his brows. Chin's sighting expressionlessly looked at the milk on the table and then at her. Self-study at night will take more than 3 hours. You're so good at your studies. It's fine if you take an hour or 2 to sleep first. Drink some milk before sleeping. As Nianj spoke, she touched the glass bottle of milk. The temperature is just right. I can drink it. Take it away. I won't drink it. His clear and cold voice was as distant as ever. He didn't sound like a classmate who had been sitting next to him for a week. Her teacher was right. When she sat next to him, she couldn't feel the slightest bit of classmate love. However, looking at his sleepy and hazy eyes, Nianj felt that he looked especially harmless at this moment. She directly said, "Then I'll leave it here first. The teacher asked me to go to the office to make up for the second year's important lessons. I might not be around for the next 3 hours. If you're uncomfortable lying on the table, you can pull my chair over and lie down." With that, Nianj smiled at him. Without waiting for him to speak, she picked up her books and papers and left. When she came back from the teacher's office an hour later with another set of papers, she saw that the bottle of milk was still in the corner in front of his desk. It hadn't been moved at all. The milk must be cold by now. He really didn't drink a single mouthful. However, he still placed it there and didn't throw it away. It could be considered that he didn't trample on her good intentions. He just didn't accept it. Nianj walked over to pick up the papers. As she did so, she looked at him. She saw that he was lying on the desk as though he had fallen asleep. When he slept, his face was facing down. With his arm blocking it, she couldn't see his face clearly. She could only see the young man's clean ears and smooth and beautiful necklines. She picked up the bottle of milk and went to the supermarket downstairs. She asked the auntie in the supermarket to heat it up and then quickly took it back. When she returned to the classroom, the second hour of self-study had just ended. Perhaps because Hao Xiuxia was too fat, he bumped into Qin Sighting's desk and woke him up. Right now, he was apologizing with a red face. Qin Sighting's face was clearly filled with dissatisfaction from being woken up, but most of it was drowsiness. Hao Xiuxia apologized by the side for a long time, but he did not speak. He did not even look at him, but his handsome brows were slightly furrowed. It was clear that he was unhappy that he had been disturbed. Seeing that Hao Xiuxia was so frightened, Shi Nianzhi quickly walked over and shielded the little fatty behind her. She then waved her hand behind her, indicating for him to stop talking and leave first. However, Hao Xiuxia refused to leave with a responsible expression. He even tugged at her. "I'm fine. I'll apologize to Almighty Qin properly. You don't have to worry about it. Can't you see that Almighty Qin is so sleepy right now? He doesn't have the energy to care about you at all." Hao Xiuxia looked at Qin Sighting again and felt that it was really the case. Just now, he had subconsciously apologized, but Qin Sighting really did not say a word. He did not even glare at him. He had just scared himself. The little fatty immediately scratched his head in embarrassment. "Then I'll go to the toilet first. I still have to study later." Go on, go on." After he left, Shi Nianzhi placed the milk that had just been warmed on Qin Sighting's table. As she had returned in a hurry, the milk bottle was still a little hot. After standing here and talking for a long time, her palms were slightly red. She secretly pinched her palm and said, "If you think yogurt is unhealthy and don't like it, forget it. You have to drink hot milk. Drink some now. It'll help you sleep when you go home at night. I specially asked the auntie at the supermarket to heat it up again. Just accept my kindness, good deskmate." Perhaps it was because the word good deskmate carried a hint of praise or derision. Qin Sighting still looked at her coldly. Just as he was about to let her take it away, he saw that her hand was slightly red. It was obvious that she had just been scalded. She even secretly held it up, trying to hide it. He retracted his gaze and looked at the milk on the table. He reached out to take it, opened it, and drank it. "Hey, be careful. It's a little hot." The moment Shi Nianzhi spoke, she saw that he had already finished it. After all, boys and girls were different. Women drank milk slowly in small mouthfuls, while men drank it in one gulp. Although Qin Sighting looked handsome and refined, he was a cold straight man in his bones. He either didn't drink it, or he drank it in one gulp. Although it was a little hot, it had been a long time since he had brought it from the supermarket. No matter how hot it was, it wouldn't burn his mouth. He expressionlessly threw the empty milk bottle into the trash can 2 meters behind his seat and glanced at her. "Is that all right?" When she met his gaze, Shi Nianzhi's heart began to pound uncontrollably again. Looking at his rosy face that had just drunk the hot milk, she suddenly chuckled and nodded foolishly. "Then go to sleep. I'll continue to go to the teacher's side to make up for my lessons." Qin Sighting did not speak. He retracted his gaze and picked up the papers. It was clear that he did not plan on sleeping anymore. "So good, look. Cough, it's really good." He was even willing to drink the milk she gave him. Even though he was still so cold and cheerless from beginning to end, at least he had taken a big step forward. Chapter 1441. At noon on Wednesday, Tang Xiao suddenly found Shi Nianzhi's class and waited for her outside. He even called a female classmate in to call her out. At that time, Shirnianj was about to go to the school cafeteria with Zhao Xiaoqing to eat beef noodles. It was mainly because she had never eaten in the cafeteria before. Xiaoqing said it was delicious, so Shirnianj wanted to go with her to try it. In the end, when she heard that someone was looking for her and that it was a boy from grade 12, class 2, she knew who it was without guessing. After all, Tang Xiao had called her a few times. First, she had hung up on him. Later, she had blacklisted his phone number. Then do you still want to go to the cafeteria with me? Zhao Xiaoqing asked softly from behind. It's almost 12 o'clock. Go eat first. I'll go with you tomorrow. Then do you want me to bring you some other food? No need, no need. I'll think of a way to settle it myself later. Shirnianj blinked at her and waved her hand with a smile. After Zhao Xiaoqing left, Shirnianj turned on her phone to take a look. Indeed, Tang Xiao had sent her a few messages on someone's phone, saying that he wanted to see her. He had sent one more than an hour ago, and another a few minutes ago. She turned to look at Qin Siding, who was about to go out for lunch. She suddenly raised her hand and tugged at the cuff of his school uniform. Usually, Qin Siding did not wear his school uniform all day. He usually wore t-shirts, and occasionally, he would wear an especially clean white shirt. He had to wear his school uniform every Monday and Wednesday, as well as some public classes. This morning, there was an activity in grade 12, so everyone was dressed neatly in school uniforms. Of course, Qin Siding was no exception. Suddenly, she tugged at him. Qin Siding turned back to look at her and saw that she was still holding on to his cuff. He glanced at her coldly. Let go. Well, we've been desk mates for several days. Can you do me a favor? Shirnianj looked at him pleadingly. In fact, she didn't have to use such a stupid method, but she really wanted to test if this method was feasible. What if Almighty Qin also hated scumbags? What if he agreed? Qin Siding glanced at her again and said again, let go. Seeing that he was not even prepared to let her speak, Shirnianj paused and could only let go. With his sleeves freed, Qin Siding turned to walk out. Just as he reached the class door, he saw a boy with his school uniform tied around his waist sticking his head out. When he saw someone else coming out, he asked, Is Shirnianj still in your class? Yes, she hasn't left yet. Tang Xiao nodded. It seemed like she was still planning to hide from him. She didn't come out or reply to his messages. It was already so late. How could she not come out for lunch? Ah, you're Tang Xiao from class 2, right? Weren't you? Oh right, I heard that your previous girlfriend was Shirnianj, right? It's so strange. Why didn't she get promoted to your class too? Instead, she came to our class 6. Did the teacher deliberately break them up? A gossipy female student saw Tang Xiao outside the door and asked curiously. Tang Xiao quickly returned a sunny smile and brushed it off. He did not answer directly and continued guarding the door. At this moment, he saw Qin Siding standing at the door. The moment their eyes met, the smile on Tang Xiao's face gradually disappeared. He had not forgotten the few points that Qin Siding had deducted from him during the school ethics evaluation last semester. Qin Siding was the first in the school year. Although he didn't usually care much, the school had long handed many important tasks to him. He didn't care, but when there was really evaluation and deduction of points, he would take the time to look at the forms and lists. With a few circles and crosses, he could almost decide a student's score for the next semester for the school. Just because he had drunk some energy drinks during the 5,000-meter run last semester, which was not considered a stimulant, Qin Siding had recorded it and deducted his points. The principal had criticized him by name. Tang Xiao would never forget this matter until he graduated. When Qin Sighting walked past, Tang Xiao only glanced at him. There was no longer a smile on his face. Qin Sighting, on the other hand, walked out without looking sideways. He didn't know if he had heard the conversation just now, but he definitely didn't take him seriously. When Shi Nianzhi walked out, Tang Xiao was about to think of a way to go in to look for her, but the school rules said that she wasn't in his class. If he barged in without a proper reason, he would definitely be given a demerit. When he suddenly saw her come out, he quickly took a step forward and reached out to grab her wrist. Nian Nian. The corner of Shi Nianzhi's eyes twitched. She pulled her hand out without a trace and glanced at him. Why are you waiting for me here? I've been looking for you for so many days, and you've blacklisted me. You didn't pick up any other calls. I could only wait for you here, Tang Xiao said as he reached out to pull her, but she dodged. Seeing that she wanted to keep a distance from him, Tang Xiao could only put down his hand. His expression was somewhat innocent. I can explain to you what happened a few days ago. At that time, Su Yiqi fainted in class. She was sitting next to me. As a man, I couldn't just sit back and do nothing when I saw a woman fainting, right? I subconsciously picked her up, but I promise I only sent her to the infirmary. I didn't do anything else. Shi Nianzhi glanced at him, smiled, and did not speak. At this moment, two girls passed by in the corridor. When they saw Tang Xiao, they quickly raised their hands to greet him. Tang Xiao, during Su Yiqi's birthday during the summer vacation, the song Deep Embrace you sang with her in the KTV was really nice. When will you have the chance to sing something else? Why didn't you sign up to sing when the school organized the program? It was clearly very nice. Tang Xiao's expression immediately changed. He turned back and glared at them. The two girls looked at him in confusion. When they saw Shi Nianzhi standing by his side, they immediately replied with an "oh." As though they knew some unspeakable secret, they dragged out their voices and quickly left. Tang Xiao turned back with an ugly expression. He saw that Shi Nianzhi was still looking at him with her head tilted and a faint smile, as though she did not take this seriously at all. Nian Nian, really, you have to give me a chance to explain. Nian Nian, really, you have to give me a chance to explain. I've been classmates with Su Yiqi for so long. If I liked her, we would have been together a long time ago. Last summer, it was her birthday, and one of my classmates had a crush on her, but he was too embarrassed to go alone, so he asked me to go with him. That night, I drank a little too much, and when I said I wanted to sing, they pushed me up to sing. I don't know much, and I only know one song that my parents used to sing. I sang it then, and I didn't even notice who was singing with me. Really, you have to believe me. Chapter 1442. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. What's important is that we've already broken up. I didn't quarrel with you or blame you. I just feel that we're not suitable. Is there a problem with breaking up peacefully? Shi Nianzhi looked at him indifferently. But I don't want to break up. I'm wronged. Tang Xiao anxiously raised his hand to touch the back of his neck. I really like you. That day in the infirmary, it was the doctor-teacher who asked me to help support her. That's why I didn't have time to call you to make things clear. You can't break up with me because of this misunderstanding. It's not fair to me. Tang Xiao, for the sake of our two families, let's be rational. We'll part on good terms. It's best not to make things too awkward. If we break up, so be it. I don't want too much nonsense and entanglement. Shi Nianzhi said softly, but if you say it's not fair, then when someone filmed you singing a love song with another girl and posted it on the school forum, everyone said that I relied on the Shi family's wealth to let you be with me. In fact, the two of you are a couple. I'm just an interloper. Is this fair to me? Also, you've been playing football the entire summer vacation. I didn't look for you much. It wasn't easy for us to meet again. On the first day of our date, you carried another girl to the infirmary. You didn't even explain to me patiently on the phone. I waited for you on the field for the entire afternoon. You took care of someone else in the infirmary. Is this fair to me? Tang Xiao looked like he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He just felt that her attitude and expression explained everything, as though no matter how he explained, it was useless. I didn't make any principled mistakes, did I? Otherwise, don't break up with me. You can just ignore me for the time being. You can watch my performance. When you forgive me, you can reconcile with me. Tang Xiao, you're in your 3rd year of high school. You're an adult, right? I'll be an adult next year. I'm not a child. Why are you playing childish games? After speaking, Shi Nianj was about to leave. Tang Xiao quickly went forward to pull her in another direction. Shi Nianj staggered and almost bumped into him. She restrained her expression and raised her head to look at him. What are you doing? It's lunch break now. I'll take you to lunch. Let's talk while we eat. Tang Xiao held her hand and refused to let go as they walked towards the stairs on the other side. Shi Nianj couldn't shake him off, and she couldn't make a scene in the corridor. Her expression wasn't good as she lowered her voice and said, "Let go, Tang Xiao, let go. If you go back like this, I'll tell my family that you're pestering me. You know that the reason we met is because our parents have business cooperation. You don't want anything to go wrong, do you? If you're sensible enough, then let go of me. We'll go our separate ways in the future and be ordinary friends. At least no one will feel awkward. But I like you. I haven't fallen in love with anyone else. What right do you have to break up with me just like that?" Tang Xiao suddenly stopped and turned around to roar at her. His roar was full of energy, as though he had suffered a huge grievance. Shi Nianj was suddenly speechless. She didn't feel that she was wrong, but could his roar erase his central air conditioning attribute? At this moment, a figure suddenly walked up the stairs. He was tall and thin, and had the unique handsomeness of a young man. He had already taken off his school uniform and was wearing a white t-shirt. He was holding a bottle of mineral water in his hand. When she suddenly saw Qin Sighting walking up the stairs, Shi Nianj felt her head swell. There were stairs on both sides of the corridor. There were more people on the right side, and it was quieter on the left side. Qin Sighting usually walked on the quiet side, but he didn't expect to be seen here. Furthermore, it hadn't even been 20 minutes since he left the class. They had already broken up. She suddenly fell in love with a male god and secretly wanted to treat him well. As long as Qin Sighting's brain was fine, he would definitely be able to tell that she liked him. Regardless of whether he cared or not, he would definitely be able to tell. Now that he suddenly saw her and her ex-boyfriend entangled here, who knew what kind of impression she would leave in his heart? In the past, Shi Nianj was a very unscrupulous person. She never cared about other people's gazes or private discussions. This was the first time she was so afraid of being painted with a strange code name in someone else's heart. She quickly pulled her hand out. Tang Xiao also saw Qin Sighting. The two of them were clearly about 1.8 meters tall when they stood together, and their family backgrounds were not bad. However, when he saw Qin Sighting, he instinctively cowered. Perhaps it was because of the trauma caused by the few points he had personally deducted last semester. At this moment, Tang Xiao did not dare to hold Shi Nianj's hand again. He only looked at her and used his eyes to beg her to go out to eat with him. At the same time, she gave him a chance to explain and perform. Shi Nianj was not in a good mood. Nianj was not in a good mood. After all, he had seen what had happened earlier. When she saw that Enchanting had already walked up and brushed past her, she was too embarrassed to call him. Originally, she wanted him to help her get Tang Xiao away. After all, Almighty Qin still had the right to speak in the third year of high school. In the end, he didn't even give her a chance to speak before rejecting her. Now, she couldn't open her mouth. She could only wait for him to leave before explaining everything to Tang Xiao. The tall and thin boy walked past just like that. There seemed to be the smell of mint on his body. Tang Xiao looked at Enchanting warily. Seeing that he had already taken a few steps with his back facing him, he looked at Nianj and said, "What do you want to eat? It's already so late. You should be hungry, right? You have to eat every meal on time. If you miss a meal, your stomach will hurt. Don't be angry with me. Let's go eat first. A stomach ache is better than nausea." Nianj did not have a good temper to deal with him. She was indeed worried that her stomach would hurt. She picked up her phone and was about to call Zhao Xiaoqing to ask her to pack a lunchbox for her. All of a sudden, a cold voice came from behind. "Didn't you say that you don't know the last question of the physics paper? Come here." The voice was Enchanting's. It was still cold and indifferent, but Nianj was momentarily stunned by his sudden words. When she saw Tang Xiao's stunned expression, she turned her eyes and saw Enchanting standing there. He was tall and handsome, looking at her indifferently. Nianj instantly reacted and quickly walked toward him, leaving the central air conditioner student Tang Xiao standing there with his mouth agape, but he did not say a word for a long time. She stepped forward and stood by Enchanting's side. She couldn't believe that he would actually help her out. Enchanting only glanced at her. He was too stingy to look at Tang Xiao as he walked toward the classroom. Nianj quickly followed obediently. Chapter 1443. When she entered the classroom, Nianj was still beaming with joy. When Enchanting sat down, she followed. When she sat down, she whispered, "Thank you." Enchanting glanced at her expressionlessly. He retracted his gaze and said calmly, "You don't want to solve the last question of the physics paper? Ah, do you want to solve it now? It's still lunch break." Before she could finish speaking, she saw that he was about to stand up. She subconsciously took out the paper from the desk. "Solve. Solve. Solve it now." She had indeed asked about the physics paper in the morning, but at that time, he had ignored her. Earlier, he could have taken a detour and ignored her. He could have used such a reasonable reason to help her out. If he said he didn't do it on purpose, she wouldn't believe him. However, Enchanting clearly had no intention of explaining. He stood up and went to the podium in front of him to take a paper that was the same as the one in her hand. He sat back down and wrote the last question in front of her. He then glanced at her. "Do you understand?" His train of thought to solve the problem was not simple at all, but if she had looked at it seriously from the beginning, she might have understood. However, from the moment he sat down again and leaned his head slightly toward her while writing the question, her mind was filled with his clean and soft short hair, as well as the cold fragrance of mint that belonged to him. There was also the man's clean and fair skin, and his beautiful and well-defined fingers that held the pen. Her mind was filled with questions. Why was he so good-looking? How could he be so good-looking? Enchanting looked at her and saw that she clearly didn't understand. Her face was slightly red, as though he didn't need her to speak to know what she was thinking when he was solving the question. He put down the pen coldly. I've read it carefully, but I don't understand it very well. Can you help me explain it verbally?" Seeing that he was angry, Nianj quickly said with a strong desire to live. However, Chin Sighting clearly lost his patience. Seeing that she was being pestered, it was already rare for him to make an exception and meddle in other people's business. Now, he had to make an exception and really help her solve the question. In the end, she was still sitting by the side thinking about it. His brain must have been electrocuted to do such a stupid thing. Really, as long as you tell me verbally, I will definitely understand. Shi Nianj was afraid that he would really be angry. After so long, she had finally built up a little friendship between desk mates. She did not want it to disappear in the blink of an eye. She reached out to pull his sleeve, but she remembered that he seemed to hate others touching him. Her hand stopped in midair. She did not know whether to touch him or not. Her expression was anxious and regretful. Chin Sighting glanced at her and said expressionlessly, "Solve it yourself first. I want to see where the loopholes and mistakes are." Okay. Her idol took a step back. Of course, she followed suit and answered the question seriously. This big question was really difficult for Shi Nianj, who had skipped a grade. Her train of thought was wrong. After reading it, Chin Sighting helped her sort out the wrong direction in her train of thought. He then casually circled a few pages in the physics book that she needed to review. When she finally understood this question, there were only 15 minutes left before the end of the lunch break. "You only went out for a while before coming back. Didn't you eat lunch?" Shi Nianj asked as she put away the papers. However, boys did not eat slowly like them. It was not strange for them to finish eating in 10 to 20 minutes. Chin Sighting did not answer. He glanced at her again. "Did you eat?" "No." She felt that her stomach was starting to hurt. But now, even if she wanted to take this opportunity to treat him to a meal, it seemed like there was no time. It was impossible for a top student to skip class and go out to eat with her. Just as she was thinking hard, Zhao Shaoqing came in with 2 steaming buns in her hands. As she walked, she said, Nian Nian, I knew you definitely didn't eat. I specially bought buns from the cafeteria." As Zhao Shaoqing spoke, she quickly placed the buns on Shi Nianj's desk. Shi Nianj was almost grateful to Zhao Shaoqing. She gratefully picked up the meat bun and began to nibble on it. As she nibbled, she mumbled, "Shaoqing, I will never forget your kindness. Don't forget it. Don't hurt just because you have a stomachache." After speaking, Shaoqing returned to her seat. Later, she recalled something and took out a bottle of orange juice from her pocket. "Do you want to drink this?" Shi Nianj nodded and then shook her head. "It's fine. I'll just eat the buns." "Drink it yourself." As class was about to start, she ate quickly. She had something in her mouth and could not speak clearly. When she turned back, she met Chin Sighting's disdainful gaze. He also seemed to dislike the smell of buns on her body. He still couldn't be bothered to look at her. His expression was cold and distant, but after all, he had just taught her how to solve the problem. She silently tilted the scales in her heart in the direction of warmth. Although he had a bad temper, he was actually quite warm inside. Seeing the obvious disdain on his cold expression, Shi Nianj coughed. Shi Nianj quickly finished the remaining half of the bun in a few bites. Thankfully, the bun was not big. Otherwise, with her appetite, she might not be able to finish 2 buns. It was probably because her male god was right by her side that she really didn't want to appear wasteful. However, even if it was 2 small buns, she ate them in a hurry and in the end, she was really stuffed. That afternoon, Shi Nianj did not feel so hungry that her stomach hurt. She was so full that her stomach hurt. Thankfully, the pain was not severe, and it did not show on her face. After holding on for a while, it no longer hurt. Otherwise, she would have really embarrassed herself. On Friday night, Uncle Chin would usually bring her back to the Sher family at this time. Today was different. He was bringing her to her new home. When the car arrived at a villa, she looked at the surrounding villa area in surprise. There's such a luxurious area near High City First High School. I thought this area was filled with apartments for students. Uncle Chin smiled. After all, it's a high school in the province. There are many wealthy areas nearby. This villa is only 10 minutes away from the school. It's very convenient. I remember I chose a duplex apartment. It's not an apartment, it's a duplex villa. At that time, she had only seen some of the interior decorations and did not pay attention to anything else. She did not expect it to be a villa. Why did she live in such a big villa alone? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.